Chapter 1241, Nine Mounds, Goodwill II. Li Ziming sat down beside the stream that flowed through the maple forest. The gentle murmur of running water was soothing. The white jade lamp base before him had already been replaced with another spiritual item, yet its grade was far too low to provide any noticeable benefit for his cultivation. He took the red-glazed bowl into his hands, rubbed it gently, and pondered. The materials used to make this are not of particularly high grade, yet the craftsmanship is remarkably intricate. It must have been forged using some special refining method. Li Ziming flicked his finger lightly, and several hazy red lights immediately shimmered along the rim of the bowl. A tiny golden-red glimmer appeared, and bright crimson flames surged from the bowl's mouth in a single breath, bursting forth like a bloom of golden flowers. The petals unfolded layer by layer, suspending themselves midair in dazzling beauty. The flames seemed eager to escape, two streams of bright red fire splitting off and bracing against the bowl's edge, struggling to pull themselves free. Li Ziming began to observe the tongues carefully. The flame was bright red, its outer layer blazing scarlet with faint streaks of paler red swirling within. However, golden sparks would flicker and leap from time to time at its white-hot core. Since he was in another's territory, uncertain whether spies might be hidden in the forest or whether the Purple Mansion realm's grand formation possessed monitoring means, Li Ziming refrained from refining the profound fire of the Three Phases Guard immediately. Instead, he merely extended his perception briefly, then reached into the crimson outer flame. A stabbing pain instantly seared through his hand, and Li Ziming hastily withdrew it. His fingertips had turned slightly pale. Far more intricate than the bright yang purple flame, and its power is incomparably greater. True fire carries the might to burn artifacts, while bright yang represents the path of generation. Even though this profound fire of the Three Phases Guard isn't particularly fierce, its destructive force against Dharma artifacts and the Dharma body is worlds apart from the bright yang purple flame born of divine ability. My Dharma body, though among the better within the Purple Mansion realm cultivator, without any body divine ability, still cannot withstand this profound fire of the Three Phases Guard. Even I must retreat before it. Suppressing the impulse to refine the flame for pill-making, he closed his eyes and entered meditation. Before long, a young immortal attendant approached and said respectfully, "Please, Taoist master, follow me." Li Ziming followed along into the forest's depths. Purple chi rose beneath his feet, and he walked along a narrow path shrouded in haze until a small pool came into view. Its edges were built from tightly fitted white stones, with nothing visible inside. The young attendant had already withdrawn, but standing beside the pool was none other than Tantai Mumming, who bowed respectfully to Li Ziming. "Greetings, Taoist Master Zheajing. This is the Hidden Refinement Pool, a wondrous place of pure essence and lesser yin nature. The spiritual energy within is balanced, harmonious, and suitable for all paths. It contains a certain spiritual nourishment called Hidden Clarity Mystic Dew, which can heal the spiritual sense, refine mana, purge impurities, dispel foreign forces, preserve life, and shield against lightning tribulations." Li Ziming nodded slightly and watched as Tantai Mumming said, "Taoist Master, please sit beside the pool and circulate your divine ability in cultivation." Li Ziming had originally thought he would be required to enter the pool to cultivate, something that could risk his Dharma body if mishandled. Since he was only asked to sit beside it, he gladly complied, closed his eyes, and soon Tantai Mumming departed. After cultivating for about an hour, he suddenly felt a cool sensation between his brows, as if a drop of pure dew had fallen upon his forehead. His mind immediately cleared and was filled with refreshing tranquility and lucid calm. Purple Mansion Realm Cultivator had already extended their Shenyang Mansion into the Great Void, and Li Ziming could see it all with perfect clarity. The clear dew that entered through the center of his brows flowed downward, dripping from the halls of the Shenyang Mansion and turning into a torrential rain, pattering continuously within the mansion's domain. It felt as though Li Ziming himself stood amid the rainfall, and he began to ponder, if one were to break through the Purple Mansion realm here, would the Hidden Clarity Mystic Dew continue to fall like this, constantly cleansing one's spiritual sense? If it truly has such an effect, it would be a treasure among treasures. No sooner had this thought crossed his mind than the divine ability within him suddenly surged, Sendi. Ng immense mana flooding into his body. White mist had long since risen within, flowing gently to nourish every part of his physical form. Li Ziming hurriedly activated his divine ability and entered meditative breathing. However, the vast white chi was too abundant. His divine ability could not refine it quickly enough, and 9/10 of the energy dissipated from his body. Li Ziming felt a pang of regret. What incredibly pure mana. It's a pity that mastering one's divine ability requires more than just abundant mana. Having sufficient energy is good, but how could one refine so quickly? As he sighed inwardly, a sudden light rose from within his Kihai. The divine ability mana that filled his entire body rushed wildly toward it, forming a storm of white mist. A radiant brilliance burst from within the storm. Valley Wind Leading Fire. The Valley Wind Leading Fire could stir fire and guide chi, refining true origin and mana. Valley Wind Leading Fire had never shown a remarkable effect throughout his cultivation life. It was helpful to his cultivation speed, yes, but nowhere near as formidable as Li Yuanjiao's flowing chi-swallowing spirit. Only now did he realize its hidden potential, as a vast torrent of mana erupted within him. Yet even so, Li Ziming could not refine the power as quickly as it came. He could only circulate his talisman chi first to maintain a balance. If he had the flowing chi-swallowing spirit technique, it might have converted all this energy directly into cultivation. All Li Ziming could do was watch as the Valley Wind Leading Fire devoured every bit of the mana in one breath, refining it and gathering it all back into his Kihai. Li Ziming glanced inwardly at his condition and thought to himself, not bad at all. And he opened his eyes. The bamboo grove before him remained the same, but the whitestone spiritual pool beneath his feet was now frozen under a thick layer of blue ice that reflected a crystalline gleam. The mist among the trees had also completely vanished. His physical body was perfectly intact, showing no trace of aftereffects. If anything, it had grown more refined. His cultivation had advanced notably, aided in part by the Valley Wind Leading Fire. With the heaven-venerating gate and his prior efforts combined, he had now stepped across the threshold. That saved me at least 3 years of work. He shook out his sleeves, rose to his feet, and walked out along the small path. Only 2 cultivators stood guard in the grove. Upon seeing him, they hurriedly bowed. Li Ziming simply asked, "How many days have passed?" "Taoist Master, we have been standing guard since you began your seclusion. It has already been 8 months. Li Ziming asked, "Has Taoist Master Hufu left the mountain?" The man immediately replied, Taoist Master Hufu has spent these past months within the mountain, preaching and teaching once a month. He has not left and should still be here now." How well they know how to handle relationships. In excellent spirits, Li Ziming made his way toward the mountain's summit. Sure enough, he saw Hufu and Lingdu in the forest ahead, engaged in philosophical discussion. The same chessboard as before sat before them, though this time a new game had begun, with only a few pieces placed. Since the two were already playing, Li Ziming knew they wouldn't drag him into the game. He walked over openly, and both men raised their brows to look his way. Lingdu smiled and said, "Congratulations, Zheajing." Li Ziming returned the greeting politely and asked, "Where is the Grand Taoist Master? I still need to offer him my thanks." Lingdu shook his head and replied, "He has gone to visit friends. It will likely be 3 to 5 years before he returns." Li Ziming expressed his regret and exchanged a few polite words, though inwardly he breathed a small sigh of relief. Sitting down beside them, he glanced at Hufu and said quietly, "Senior Hufu, when will you return to Jiangnan?" Hufu looked surprised and replied, "Perhaps in a few months' time." Li Ziming seized the moment and said with a smile, "I have a small favor to ask of you, Senior. I took in a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator in the Outer Sea and planned to bring her back to Jiangnan, but I still have many affairs to attend to in the Outer Sea. I cannot split myself in 2, so I would like to trouble you for some help." A trip to Jiangnan would not take long at all for a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. The two immediately understood why he would rather not go himself. Hufu merely nodded and said, "It must be Xia Xiaoyu. She has often come to hear my teachings these past months. I even thought she was a disciple of 9 Mounds seeking the Tao. Her cultivation is shallow, but her heart for the Tao is genuine." Li Ziming nodded with a trace of regret and said, "She was carefully chosen by me, but her background is lacking. She doesn't bear the name either. I fear that she'll lack the status to command respect once she returns. It's been a bit of a headache for me. I was thinking of finding her a better lineage." As he spoke, he turned to Lingdu. The old man was shrewd as ever, and the latter said leisurely, "That's easy enough. Just give her a respectable name to hang on to, so long as it's far Outer Sea, true or false hardly matters. If you don't mind, you could let her claim kinship with a 9 Mounds cultivator, a borrowed lineage, nothing more." Li Ziming had originally thought of securing her an outer sect disciple identity, but it seemed Lingdu wanted no karmic ties at all, and had no intention of entangling his Tao lineage in the matter. He could only answer, "That's indeed a fine solution." Lingdu sighed deeply and replied, "There was a disciple here who perished while breaking through the Purple Mansion realm, severing his lineage. Have her take him as her maternal grandfather, call him grandfather, and offer incense before his spirit tablet. That will settle it." Lingdu had casually chosen a deceased man to tie the name to, but Li Ziming didn't mind as it was merely a matter of formalities. He laughed and said, Excellent. I must trouble you for this favor, Senior Lingdu. Before long, Tantai Mumming came hurrying up with Zia Xiaoyu in tow. The young woman looked visibly uneasy, as she had no standing to speak in this place. Lingdu cast a single glance her way and said, "Mumming." Tantai Mumming hurried forward. The two exchanged a few whispered words, and whether or not Mumming understood the full truth, his expression transformed completely when he stepped back, exclaiming with joy, "So she's the long-lost granddaughter of senior brother Yu Dui. I'll take her down at once to acknowledge her ancestry." Zia Xiaoyu reacted even faster. Her eyes reddened instantly, and she nodded heavily. Tantai Mumming led her away, speaking gently to her along the path with every sign of earnest care. Li Ziming watched the two leave. Lingdu let out a sigh full of hidden meaning and said, "Zheajing, some cannot rise even when nourished by endless rain, while others soar to the heavens with but a faint breeze. Truly, it is difficult to speak of fate." Chapter 1242, Refining a Pill Through Fate I. Li Ziming nodded in acknowledgement. The three Purple Mansion realm cultivators then began discussing profound Tao principles. Lingdu started the topic by bringing up majestic Earth's flawlessness and its countering principles. Hufu responded with tales of his family's Taoist masters crossing hands with majestic Earth cultivators, comparing them one by one, and suggesting that a certain divine ability of the orthodox wood was best suited to subdue majestic Earth. Their conversation was delightfully animated. Li Ziming, of course, had little to add. The only ones he was familiar with were Changxi of Stable Earth and Sumian of Treasure Earth. He had merely heard that someone named Chengyan cultivated majestic Earth, but had never met him, so he just listened quietly, occasionally throwing in some idle words to keep the conversation flowing. Taking advantage of a pause in their exchange, Li Ziming turned to Lingdu and asked, "Senior, do you happen to know the heavenly glow Tao lineage?" Hufu's expression grew faintly amused, his gaze turning deep, while Lingdu frowned and said, "Zheajing, do you mean Mount Luoxia, where the majestic light gathers the rosy glow?" Li Ziming had been asking on behalf of his elder brother, but he hadn't expected the first reply to bring up Mount Luoxia. It was his first time hearing Mount Luoxia being described like that, and he paused briefly before hastily replying, "No, I mean the heavenly glow Purple Mansion Tao lineage." Lingdu blinked, visibly relieved, and smiled helplessly. He said, "The world's heavenly glow comes from two places, Mount Luoxia and Zia Mountain. They seem like separate sites, but both belong to the same person. If you mean the heavenly glow Purple Mansion Tao lineage, that's someone's private domain. Most Tao lineages have nothing of the sort." Li Ziming replied flatteringly, "I know such things can't be asked elsewhere, and most Tao lineages indeed lack them, but your ancient and inscrutable lineage surely surpasses all others, so I thought to ask." Hufu sighed, his gaze meaningful as he replied, "Zheajing, you've assumed too much. We have nothing related to heavenly glow." His words were deliberately obscure. Li Ziming looked up in surprise, but neither of them seemed inclined to elaborate. As he spoke, someone else approached from the forest. Tantai Mumming waited until Hufu finished speaking before bowing respectfully to the three and reporting, "I've brought fellow Taoist Zia to acknowledge her lineage and read senior brother Yu's biography. She has changed her attire and now waits quietly in the forest." "Good," Lingdu replied with a smile, "fellow Tao. Ist Zheajing likely has something more to say. Let her come up." Li Ziming then realized it was probably not appropriate for him to linger. He thought to himself, "I have indeed stayed long enough. I've already received their favor, and the Nine Mounds Tao lineage has treated me kindly. It would be discourteous to remain any longer. It's better to leave early." Before long, Zia Xiaoyu ascended the path. She wore white on top, a gray skirt below, and seashell ornaments that jingled faintly. She was dressed in the manner of an Eastern sea cultivator. Li Ziming beckoned her closer, drew one red and one gold scroll from his sleeve, and said, "Take these two scrolls back with you. The red one concerns your marriage arrangement, and the gold one is my personal letter. Deliver both to Elder Xuanxuan in the lake." Zia Xiaoyu's thoughts were unreadable, but she bowed respectfully and said, "Taoist master, thank you for granting this marriage. I will be sure to deliver them to the elder personally." Only then did Li Ziming turn toward Hufu and give a respectful bow as he said, "My thanks for troubling you, senior." Hufu nodded slightly. Li Ziming gestured for Zia Xiaoyu to stand behind him, and Hufu replied, "Zheajing, there's no need to be so formal, just call me Hufu. The Pure Victory Tao and the Great Peace Radiant Temple have been clashing in recent years, shaking the Great Western Plains. The Sword Gate has asked my Great Ziyuqi Temple for aid, and I must head west to the Great Western Plains anyway. It will be along my path, there's no trouble at all." Li Ziming nodded, but Lingdu looked surprised, eyes widening as he asked, "The Pure Victory Tao, one of the three from Spleetered Island, remarkable, truly remarkable." Li Ziming knew a fair number of ancient matters, and Spleetered Island was no secret. In the old days, the immortal Yings had divided the lesser Yang Devil monarch into three, one of whom, Devil Monarch Xian, had once resided in the Great Western Plains. Though he didn't know why Lingdu would bring up Devil Monarch Xian at the mention of the Pure Victory Dao, Li Ziming could tell this was no small matter. He lowered his voice and asked, "Senior, are you saying, Lesser Yang?" Hufu merely shook his head. Even though Li Ziming spoke carefully, the elder raised a finger to his lips, his expression grave, and replied, "Not necessarily. The Pure Victory Dao's rise began over a decade ago when its leader achieved the Diverse Mansion. Then just a year ago, one of the 5 Bright Ones refined a divine ability. With 2 Purple Mansion realm cultivators emerging in succession, the balance of power has reversed, and the merciful ones of the Great Peace Radiant Temple can no longer withstand them. There's been no trace of that person, but since they belong to the lesser Yang Dao lineage, it may very well be that Great One's doing." Lingdu's expression darkened. He too raised a finger, this time pointing at the heavens, and said, "Do not forget, there is another lesser Yang in the outer heavens. If he was injured, it could have stirred the other 2 to act strangely as well." The 3 exchanged glances in silence. Those 2 could speak freely, but Li Ziming dared not even listen. One was of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage and a Supreme Yin Immortal's kin, while the other belonged to the 9 Mounds Dao lineage, a great power of the Outer Sea. Li Ziming was but a lone wanderer with no patron. Feeling a chill run down his back at their silence, he waved his hand and said, "I won't impose further. My thanks to 9 Mounds Immortal Mountain for the spiritual flames. Your kindness will be remembered." After exchanging a few polite words, Lingdu offered only brief farewells and escorted him down the mountain. The old man was clearly distracted. All 3 had their own thoughts, making the parting feel somewhat perfunctory. Only Hufu added a final remark. "By escorting Xia Xiaoyu back to the lake, others will assume I met with you, Zheajing. I care little for Yehui or Cheng Xiao's suspicions, but if Tinglin herself asks, it would be awkward for me to lie." Clearly, since both belonged to the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, the Purple Smoke Gate and Ziyuqi Temple still shared some rapport, and Hufu found it difficult to deceive her directly. Li Ziming thought for a moment. He still needed to forge a grand formation and could not afford to alienate this Taoist master, yet revealing his whereabouts too precisely might cause trouble, especially if Cheng Xiao sought to exploit it. After some deliberation, he drew a jade pendant from his sleeve and handed it to Hufu, saying, "I am currently traveling near the Danga King Sea. If fellow Taoist Tinglin wishes to find me, tell her to go to the border between the Danga King Sea and the Peacock Sea. Crush this charm there, and I will come to meet her." Hufu nodded in understanding and accepted it. Li Ziming bade farewell to the 2, soaring swiftly across the sea until he reached the nearby Danga King Sea. The chaos there had somewhat subsided. Several demon generals had divided the territory, and small factions were beginning to form, leaving the waters relatively calm. He carefully examined his Dharma body to ensure no trace of lesser Yang radiance remained, then muttered, "What a shock, suddenly talking about something so terrifying. Mention 1, and 3 more come up, but before you know it, 7 or 8 are dragged in." Li Ziming scanned the surroundings, then dove into the sea and settled on the ocean floor. He activated the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger technique, moving through the earth beneath a layer of pure stable earth radiance. Riding the stable tiger flying shuttle, he tunneled deep underground and found a fire vein to reside within. He carved out a cave using the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, guided the fire veins flow into it, and placed his pill furnace atop. Only then did Li Ziming sit down. Before he could act, a sudden chill swept through his Shenyang mansion, as though a blast of icy force struck him squarely on the head. Sparks burst in his mind, his vision blurred, and cold surged up his face until tears welled from his eyes. It's over." It felt as though a giant hand had suddenly seized his spiritual sense and hurled it straight into the boundless outer heavens. Suddenly he beheld blazing suns and countless stars. Rows of white jade immortal palaces stretched endlessly as clouds circled the moon. Golden crows shone beside soaring phoenixes and lewins. 12 bridges arched across golden lakes, palatial halls lay in sweeping rows, and radiant birds of celestial plumage filled the skies. The scene swept past too quickly for Li Ziming to see clearly before he plunged once more into darkness. It felt as though he had fallen into a deep underground palace. Dim lights flickered ahead, and a stone bridge stretched across the void. A man in gray clothes, blood staining his robes, stood upon it. Upon closer look, the composed, steady features of a middle-aged face became clear. It was Wang Quan. There was only that single bridge, suspended alone in an endless void in the dim gloom. Wang Quan looked upward, gripping a blue-gold sword in his hand. Countless threads of silken white radiance descended from above, as if connected to some profound Tao collection. Li Ziming's vision was drawn rapidly toward that white radiance. Treasures, Taoist manuals, and Dharma artifacts flashed before his eyes in a dazzling kaleidoscope of color, until his sight came to rest at the deepest point, upon a single spirit sword hanging in midair. The sword was simple and elegant. Its surface was pale gray in color without a single pattern. Unlike the ornate forging styles of the present age, its guard was almost as wide as the blade, giving the entire weapon the shape of a single straight line. What truly caught Li Ziming's attention was the sword's only ornament. It was a bright white spirit stone set at the end of its hilt. The familiar aura emanating from that spirit stone stirred the talisman seeds within his Shenyang mansion, making Li Ziming tremble. It was not the first time he had felt this. Years ago, when Yu Muxian had arrived by boat across the lake, the young Li Ziming had fainted under the influence of a similar fragment. The sensation was identical. A bolt of lightning seemed to explode in Li Ziming's heart, and a single phrase flashed across his mind, a fragment of the immortal mirror. The white brilliance receded swiftly, followed by the fading of darkness itself. Li Ziming felt the world spin before he slowly opened his eyes. He saw dim stone walls and a dark pill furnace standing before him. The crackle of the fire vein reached his ears, and it was clear that he had returned to the underground cave. He first bowed deeply, then stood up. His face alternated between pale and bluish hues, and a wisp of cold breath escaped his lips. Forcing down his discomfort, he reached into his storage pouch and took out a jade box. Cough! The moment Li Ziming opened his mouth, several pale vines burst wildly out, climbing across his chin. Their tendrils hung down like spider plants, blooming in midair with clusters of pure white flowers. Fragrance filled the cave, mingled with a sharp, penetrating chill. He reached out, seized the spirit item whole, and placed it into the jade box without even glancing at it, then hurried to inspect his body. No trace of a supreme yin divine ability's impact, only a lingering chill. So it was the immortal mirror. I thought I'd provoke some true monarch to anger, and was about to be crushed to death by their fruition attainment. Relieved, the cold within his chest melted away, leaving him both stunned and elated. Wang Kuan, that was Wang Kuan. That place must be the Mifan Dao collection, and there's an immortal mirror fragment inside. This place is tens of thousands of kilometers from Jiangbei, yet I was able to glimpse the scenery of Mifan. Incredible. And that immortal palace, like a celestial pavilion, could it be in the outer heavens? He surmised that his mind must have first connected to some point in the outer heavens, then, through the link between the outer heavens and the immortal mirror, drawn closer to Jiangbei, and saw the Mifan inheritance before traversing into the Mifan Dao collection itself to perceive where the fragment lay. Such divine and unfathomable power. Suppressing his astonishment, Li Ziming soon realized that the opportunity had already passed. The Mifan Dao lineage must open only at intervals. This time, several Daos like Chengyun Gate must have gathered their legacies and opened it for the first time. Though I missed it now, there will be another chance if I wait a while. If that's the case, it's far too late to cultivate my own Mifan disciple. That treasure sword can't be left within for 10 or 20 years. I can only put everything behind supporting Wang Kuan. Chapter 1243, Refining a Pill Through Fate, II. Li Ziming sat quietly in place, his gaze deep and solemn as he thought, Wang Kuan, is this the will of heaven or the hand of destiny? Li Ziming slowly closed his eyes. His kinsman Li Jianqian at home had also received the talisman's response and would surely sense this event. Since he was overseeing matters there, Li Ziming did not need to rush back. He turned his eyes toward the jade box. Inside, a stalk of moon orchid remained vibrant, its 8 small blossoms blooming with a faint white glow. What a fine portion of purple mansion realm nourishment. Li Ziming's sight was no longer what it once was. A trace of heavenly light resided between his brows, allowing him to discern the grades of many treasures. Though he could not identify exactly what supreme yin spirit item this was, he could tell it was of purple mansion realm and was comparable to the hornwood golden tassel. Perfect timing to open the furnace and refine pills. I even carry one great ingredient within myself. After steadying his mind, he began to feel around his own body, pressing precisely down on his dantian. Then he used a thumb and forefinger to gently pull it apart. A tearing sound rang out. The flesh of his lower abdomen parted open, revealing the kihai within his dantian. Brilliant golden light poured forth, illuminating the entire cavern. Li Ziming hastily rolled up his sleeves, reached into his own abdomen with his other hand, groped for a moment, and slowly pulled a lustrous white bead out. It was smooth, round, and crystal-like, no larger than a grain of rice at first. But the moment it left his body, it swelled to the size of a fist and exuded a heady fragrance. Li Ziming almost failed to hold it steady. His entire body's divine ability surged into motion as he invoked the suppressive power of the heaven-venerating gate, finally forcing the bead to stop expanding. Huff! This was the refined spiritual chi from the hidden refinement pool, tempered by the valley wind leading fire. For a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator, storing such a thing within the Kihai would mean it could neither be exhausted nor moved. Even for a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, it would take long cycles of circulation to draw it out normally. Fortunately, Li Ziming's mind was quick and practical. Digging it out by hand was faster. He loosened the fingers holding his wound, brushed lightly over the skin, and the flesh mended instantly, leaving not even a scar. But my ability to suppress divine ability has weakened greatly without the aid of the valley wind leading fire. Gazing at the bead in his hand, Li Ziming immediately began analyzing it with the eyes of an experienced alchemist. Its pure essence imbued with the mana of the lesser yin Dao, it has also lingered within my Kihai long enough to be tainted with traces of bright yang. If refined into a pill, it should yield a batch of spirit pills that expand divine ability and carry marvelous effects. After all, this chi pill requires constant suppression by my divine ability. If I release it even for a moment, it might erupt and form a mountain of spiritual chi. Keeping it in my hand forever is hardly a solution. His expression suddenly turned odd. Well, it's not as if I couldn't carry it. I could always open my belly again and let the valley wind leading fire keep watch over it. Of course, that was a joke. While the valley wind leading fire could suppress it effortlessly, the bead had grown to the size of a fist and could hardly be stuffed back into the Kihai now. Though he had not yet refined the profound fire of the three phases guard, with the valley wind leading fire still available to him, Li Ziming figured one hand was enough to manage. He took out the vermilion ceramic bowl, flicked his finger lightly again. Sunded. Rumble. The profound fire of the three phases guard burst forth once again, its brilliant red light illuminating the entire cave. Li Ziming inhaled lightly. A rushing sound followed as the entire flame surged eagerly from the bowl, flooding toward him with his breath. In the blink of an eye, the red brilliance vanished from the cavern, leaving only an empty vermilion-glazed bowl resting in his palm. As soon as the profound fire of the three phases guard entered his body and tried to scatter, the valley wind leading fire flared with a dazzling brilliance. It unleashed a powerful pull, like a starving beast, that bound the profound fire in place. The flame shimmered faintly as it fell completely under Li Ziming's control. He leisurely guided the fire downward and settled it within the juke court, where the bright yang purple flame not only refrained from conflicting with the true fire but even yielded space, encircling it protectively. Only then did Li Ziming open his eyes. His pupils first turned a bright red, then briefly shimmered with pale gold before fading back to their normal hue. Excellent. With the hidden refinement Chi Pill and Moon Orchid in hand, Li Ziming felt at ease and began contemplating a method for refinement. I have no matching pill formula. If refined separately, I could only improvise and the results wouldn't be anything remarkable. But if refined together, pure essence, lesser yin, supreme yin, and bright yang all coexist without conflict, I could forge a great pill. Yet pill refinement follows the order of ruler, minister, assistant, and envoy. The Moon Orchid is a major ingredient, and so is the hidden refinement Chi Pill, neither inferior to the other. If one acts as the ruler and the other as a forceful minister, their differing natures will clash. Even if I force a success, the medicinal power would be wasted. Zhao family's pill techniques were of the traditional Jiangnan pill techniques, but Li Ziming had long transcended Zhao Yuanxi's teachings. Of the methods he mastered, true profound heart-cleansing pill and heavenly quintessence-expelling pill differed only in formula but shared similar foundations. The Heaven's Will single intent method, acquired from the End of the Sea, however, was a complete and independent alchemical system of its own. The Heaven's Will single intent method demands deep Dao attainment. That's not the hard part, but it requires one's own fate as the main catalyst for pill refinement. Li Ziming was already a master in alchemy, with insight far beyond most Purple Mansion realm cultivators in Jiangnan. The Heaven's Will single intent method had elevated his comprehension of pill refinement and broadened his vision of the Tao of alchemy to a higher realm. In Jiangnan alchemy, one refined by nature, matching the elemental properties of spirit items. Thus the alchemist's skill was tested in mana, cultivation, and divine ability. The Heaven's Will single intent method, however, refines through destiny, matching the life rank of each spirit item. The refiner is tested in Tao attainment, fate, and inherent rank. Spirit items also possess both nature and life. The Moon Orchid's inherent rank is astonishingly high, but the hidden refinement Chi Pill is essentially condensed mana, nature without life. Even after circulating through my body, it's still far inferior to the orchid. If I use the Heaven's Will single intent method and use the Moon Orchid as the ruler herb and the hidden refinement Chi Pill as the steadfast minister, the pairing of lesser yin supporting supreme yin would be perfect. Moreover, the orchid was born from my mouth, the Chi Pill from my belly. They share one fate and origin. Such a natural harmony, who else but I could complete this pill? A sudden clarity dawned on Li Ziming. Through his own exploration, he had faintly glimpsed a higher plane of alchemical mastery. Excitement welled within him. He struck the furnace with a palm, and the brilliant red profound fire of the three phases guard burst forth, spiraling around both sides of the pill furnace before pooling at the base as a sea of crimson profound flame. He had never been so focused. Drawing out a piece of white jade spiritwood gifted to him upon breaking through to the purple mansion realm, a treasure long kept, he cast it into the true fire first. His storage pouch at his waist trembled slightly. Boxes long and short, jade bottles large and small, were all lifted out by his divine ability mana. Huyuan spirit water, Wuxi sand, and Yang essence spirit herb along with various spirit items streamed forth, leaping one after another into the furnace. A layer of thick, bright purple pill liquid gradually condensed at the bottom of the furnace. The hidden refinement chi pill fell into it, instantly threatening to erupt into a storm of boundless spiritual chi. Li Ziming's heavenly light flared between his brows, and a white divine ability surged forth, suppressing the violent spiritual chi and binding it firmly within the furnace. When the final stalk of moon orchid dropped in, Li Ziming immediately sealed the furnace lid, pressing both palms against its sides. Bright yang divine ability spread over the surface. He closed his eyes tightly and poured his full strength into the refinement. This pill embodies everything I have ever learned. It will surely mark the pinnacle of my alchemical life thus far. Southern Sea. Stone Pond Sea was the region of the Southern Sea with the least land, often called the 10,000 Miles Stone Pond. It bordered the southern frontiers to the north, Songzhou to the east, and Lufeng to the south. Beside the Azure Ponsec's northern Dan state, it was scattered with countless tiny islands adjoining several continents. It had seen peace and stability return in recent years, allowing trade to grow more prosperous than ever. The scenery in northern Dan was serene and graceful. At its center rose Elephant Mountain, more than 2,000 meters tall. A great pavilion rose at the summit, bustling with cultivators coming and going. Beyond it stood another smaller pavilion, nestled in the quiet rear courtyard. A man in white stood motionless within. He had an elegant, noble appearance, with a long face and brows set close to his sharp eyes, giving him a refined and commanding grace. He held a pure white sword, interwoven with 7-colored radiance in his hand. A surge of sword chi brewed along the blade's spine. His brows furrowed slightly, his eyes closed as his face paled. The sword light flickered uncertainly for several breaths, on the verge of bursting forth, until he suddenly opened his eyes. Cough! He coughed twice, and clusters of osmanthus blossoms slipped down his robe, scattering across the ground in a ring of golden light. Though he had only lost focus for an instant, the sword light had merely wavered instead of erupting. It was proof of this man's extraordinary mastery of both spell arts and sword arts. This man was none other than Li Zizhai, Rosy Glows of the Celestial Pavilion, head of the Jiushan Pavilion, direct descendant of the Moongaze immortal family, and the current ruler of northern Dan's Stone Pond territory. Li Zizhai steadied his mind, and the sword's radiance instantly calmed. All the fallen osmanthus blossoms swirled upward with a graceful flick of his sleeve. A jade box leapt from his waist, swallowing them whole before vanishing into his storage pouch. No trace was left behind. He lifted his brows slightly, eyes flickering with a glint of confusion and awe. The immortal mirror fragment. Which disciple of my family has encountered such a fate? Chapter 1244, Ji Form Pair I. Underground, white light. Li Zizhai pondered briefly and thought to himself, the Chengyang Gate built an underground palace. I heard that its deepest point lies beneath Mount Zioshi and is perhaps connected to the Mifen Dao lineage. Mifen 3 sects and Mifen sect both belong to the Daoxuan Dao lineage. Their ancestry originates from the same branch. As the master of the Jiushan Pavilion, Li Zizhai had acquired a vast pool of knowledge. Though he could not access the innermost Dao collections of the Azure Pond sect, over a decade of extensive reading had nonetheless deepened his foundation. Earlier, I speculated that the immortal mirror was an immortal artifact of Moonlight Origin Mansion, but now it's somehow linked to Daoxuan. If Moonlight Origin Mansion shares the same origin as the supreme Yang Dao lineage, then it cannot be the same as Daoxuan. Otherwise, something doesn't add up. After a moment's thought, Li Zizhai sheathed his sword, stepped out of the pavilion, left the residence, and crossed the steps to another mansion. Li Zizhai's cave dwelling was protected by 2 layers of wards. He needed no attendants and instead remained wary of anyone spying on his spell arts, so he kept the cave entirely empty. Only upon entering the mansion did he see figures, and after passing through several courtyards, a woman in palace robes came forward to greet him. "You're back this early. Did something happen?" Li Zizhai replied, "I made a breakthrough earlier, a good one." The breakthrough he spoke of was naturally the five-colored boundless sword art. It was a sword technique that emphasized both swordplay and art. Li Zijai possessed the talisman chi of rainbow-pierced skyway. Its cultivation improved his arts and worked equally well with this five-colored boundless sword art. Ordinarily, the sword art was exceedingly difficult, yet Li Zijai needed only to focus on the sword aspect, greatly reducing the difficulty, and it even seemed to faintly elevate his sword Dao in return. His swordsmanship, which had been stagnant for years, began to advance once more. Having been married to Yang Xiaor for so many years, Li Zijai naturally understood her thoughts. He extended his hand, palm up, and smiled as he said, "Look." A gleam of warm white light rose from his palm, then split into hues of yellow and white, weaving and drifting together like a rainbow after rain. The colors intermingled, then slowly merged back into a gentle white glow that sank down again. But Yang Xiaor felt no sharp edge from it. She was stunned at first, then overjoyed as she exclaimed, "Sword essence." Li Zijai smiled and said softly, "Years ago, when the palace descended and we fought for the glazed pagoda of unrestrained boundary on Dupont Island, the Dragon Clan did not intervene. Still, there were plenty of cultivators from the Southern Sea. Though spell arts are powerful, they are easily countered by specialized Dharma artifacts. Now that I have sword essence in hand, things will be much easier should anything arise again." Yang Xiaor answered with a smile, then grew solemn. She stepped back, shut both doors, activated the protective formation, and drew out a talisman from her robe, pressing it onto the door as black light rippled across its surface. After making sure no one was nearby, she stepped forward and whispered, "I inquired with my family. The spiritual aura has changed rapidly. The devil cultivators have been scattered, vitality flourishes, and small families and sects are springing up like bamboo after rain. The entire Stone Pond region is connected in chi. Almost every island is covered with the timber ginseng tree. My family has already taken notice." The spiritual aura of Stone Pond in the Southern Sea had long been one of peril transcending and karma stabilizing, a pure earth virtue aura that benefited both devil cultivators and earth virtue. It was balanced among the 12 essences, yet somehow harmless to thunder. The rampant devil cultivators of recent years were inevitably linked to it. In recent decades, this aura had grown increasingly unstable and was already entering decline. When a spiritual aura flourishes, it supports cultivators and nourishes spirit items. When it declines, it instead requires cultivators and spirit items to sustain it. By eradicating the devil cultivators of Stone Pond, Li Zijai had cut off the aura's last threads of survival, causing it to collapse suddenly. This forced the island master of Thunder Island to act personally against Li Zijai, despite the Azure Pond sect's pressure. In the end, even the Purple Mansion Realm cultivator of Thunder Island was sealed in the Great Void by a single talisman from Yuanxiu. The truth behind the event was complex, but to outsiders, it was merely said that the island master of Thunder Island had challenged Li Zijai and lost by a single move. Even disciples of the immortal sects could only vaguely see it as a power struggle between Northern Dan's Stone Pond and Thunder Island, or at most a conflict between the orthodox and demonic Daos. Only a handful, Li Zijai among them, knew that the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators had fought within the Great Void. Yuanxiu had pushed Li Zijai to the forefront, which immediately made Yang Xiaor uneasy. She sought to understand the true purpose behind eradicating the devil cultivators and altering the spiritual aura, so she had returned to her sect several times to inquire with her family. When she mentioned the timber ginseng tree, Li Zijai nodded lightly and said, "I once surveyed Stone Pond. The timber ginseng tree planted by the Lingu family had already spread throughout the islands, so the eradication of the devil cultivators was a foregone conclusion. The timber ginseng tree thrives year-round like evergreen vines in the southern sea climate. Now that these small sects and families have risen, they indeed nurture the Lingu family's Wuzha worms." Though the Lingu family withdrew from the region, most of its vital interests remain under the Azure Pond sects, or rather, the Lingu family's control. Otherwise, they would never have yielded so easily. Yet with the spiritual aura shifting so rapidly, I fear something may soon happen. Yang Xiaor's expression grew grave as she spoke softly. "That is only the surface of the matter. There is a deeper meaning. According to my brother's research, the timber ginseng tree is a pillar wood called Jia wood in ancient times. The Wuzha worm is also of wood nature, a symbol of vital growth and procreation called Yi wood back then. Their union is the pairing of Jia and Yi. You have brought peace to Stone Pond. It is not Azure Pond's main branch, but a pillar nonetheless." Its revival through minor sects and families also signifies procreation, again, the union of Jia and Yi. There are many such symbolic parallels, all consistent with the patterns seen when the Lingu family once ruled Stone Pond. My elders estimate that Stone Pond's spiritual aura will take at least a year or so to complete its transformation, with a 70% chance that it will likely shift into the Ji form pair, turning toward wood virtue. Li Zijai understood at once. He exhaled deeply and said, The union of Jia and Yi derives its symbol from metal. The Jia-Yi form pair likely favors the orthodox wood. Taoist master Yuanxiu's cooperation with the Lingu family has lasted years, so I'm only finishing what he began. He seeks to form his golden core in the southern sea, but he had only 4 divine abilities. Has he already attained the 5th? Yang Xiaor lowered her gaze and said, he likely couldn't find a 5th Dao lineage, and his lifespan is running out. Even for a wood virtue cultivator, time is short. If he doesn't make his breakthrough now, he never will. Do you remember Anui Heaven? It said that Taoist master Yunxiu burned its Dao collection himself. Perhaps he had already found a replacement for the 5th divine ability then and wished no one to know. Now, with no choice left, he is ready to risk his life for it. Li Zijai rubbed the space between his eyebrows and said softly, that's true as well. I've heard that among the Azure Pond sect's 3 elders, Senior Yuansu possessed the greatest innate talent, though his Dao lineage was lacking. Senior Si far surpasses Yuanwu, and now that he is attempting to form his golden core, even if he dies, he'll make a stunning mark. But once he falls, I'll be the one left to take the heat. Chapter 12:45, Ji form pair II. Yang Xiaor nodded silently. Kai Wei had annihilated several generations of prodigies, and Kai Buzi had vanished. With Yuanxiu's death, the Azure Pond sect would be left without a single divine ability, yet as part of the supreme Yang Dao lineage, none would dare offend it. The outer sea interests, however, would surely be lost. Though Li Zijai had a younger brother in the Purple Mansion realm, and was an influential figure within the Azure Pond sect, to the point where even Thunder Island wouldn't dare act against him, the stone pond he had governed for so many years might very well turn to dust. What worried Yang Xiaor the most, however, was Tantaijin's stance. She lowered her voice even more and said, Tantaijin now acts as the acting sect master. If something happens to Yuanxiu and he still refuses to recall you, that will be real trouble. The 9 Mounds Dao lineage behind him is far from simple. They fear no ordinary Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Won't come to that. Li Zijai shook his head and replied, he won't leave me stationed here. There are far more critical places than the Southern Sea. Even if he means to hand Stone Pond to the devil cultivators, sending the Lingu family would make more sense. Right now, I'm a stabilizing presence. Tantaijin still needs me. What worries me is if the Miao family and Chengxiao faction collude, that would be troublesome. Yang Xiaor bowed her head slightly. Just as the couple were speaking, the black radiance on the door suddenly flickered. She immediately fell silent. A few breaths later, a knocking sound came. Knock, knock. My lord, Lord Quan has returned to Northern Dan and wishes to report to you. Li Zijai's heart stirred. He gave his wife a slight nod to calm her unease, then opened the door and said warmly, let him bring his men up. Quan Yuduan entered briskly before long, followed by a young man in black who looked around uneasily. Behind him came the sword-bearing Si Zunhui, while Li Wushao brought up the rear with a grave expression. Greetings, master/grandfather/lord. Li Zijai swept his gaze over them but did not see Li Chenghui. After a brief moment of contemplation, his expression remained unreadable. He turned to Li Zhuliuo with a faint smile and said, be seated. Once everyone had taken their seats, Li Zijai raised his brows and asked, how did Chenghui reply? Quan Yuduan offered a letter with both hands and said, the young master did not respond verbally. He wrote a letter and asked me to deliver it to you. Li Zijai accepted it lightly, pressing the letter onto the desk before looking toward Li Zhuliuo with a smile. He said, Liuer, you've traveled far and hard. I have a residence prepared for you. Go, rest and recover for now. Li Zhuliuo naturally had no objections and nodded quickly. Li Wushao led the others away. What Li Zijai cared about most at the moment was the fragment of the immortal mirror. Logically speaking, he had only just glimpsed its vision, so there was no reason for Si Zunhui and the others to have emerged so quickly. Frowning, he asked, Zunhui, how fared the Mifan Dao lineage exploration? Si Zunhui gave a wry smile and shook his head, replying, Master, when we entered the underground palace and reached its deepest chamber, there was an inverted altar where converging waters flowed backward. It was a place vast within the small, but inside was utter darkness, and we were besieged by water, fire, and lightning. The Foundation Establishment realm cultivators who went deeper were barely able to endure. We lingered on the outskirts, gathered 1 or 2 useless spirit items, and had no choice but to retreat. Li Zijai understood immediately and nodded as he replied, it seems the place requires at least Foundation Establishment realm to enter properly. It seems we can't reach it for now. You've done well to endure floods, flames, and thunder for years. That tempering has surely benefited you. Focus on your cultivation for now. Si Zunhui bowed, presenting a jade slip respectfully as he said, I took the time to record every obstacle we encountered. Everything is contained within this slip, so that the sect may study them and perhaps aid future disciples. Li Zijai chuckled and shook his head. Si Zunhui was already the fastest cultivator of the Mifan Dao lineage, and no one else could match the Si family's young master. Such notes held little meaning. He waved him off dismissively. Quan Yuduan withdrew as well. Only then did Li Zijai pick up the letter, unfold it, read in silence for a while, and finally fold it again with a long sigh. Sigh. Yang Zier came out from the hall once more. Li Zijai ground the ink and said softly, "The boy also shows a desire to come out, but he still has knots in his heart. I'll speak with him, let him stay by my side for a few years, and have Julio married before sending him back. Once the southern sea stirs again, we may never have such calm days." Moongai's Lake. Morning light rose over the orderly islands of the Wan family's domain, gilding the great hall's floor tiles in gold. Clad in crimson robes, Li Jianqian paced the hall. The Dao stipend reform had been in motion for several months, which had created countless rules and details to amend. To make matters worse, the season of sacrifice had arrived. With little time and his cautious nature, he ultimately chose not to risk capturing a Foundation Establishment realm demonic creature. Upon reflection, it was no real loss. He had only just broken through to the Foundation Establishment realm. Receiving the talisman now would merely stabilize his realm. It would be better to wait 5 or 10 years, refine himself to mid or late Foundation Establishment realm, and undergo the rite then. If not for how distant the Purple Mansion realm is and the uncertainty of reaching it, it would be best to wait until attaining divine ability before receiving the talisman. The Foundation Establishment realm has shortcuts for advancing cultivation. The Purple Mansion realm does not. Even if it does, the cost is immense for only minor gain. If the wondrous effects of talismanic chi could still apply by then, we would save countless years. Though there was no Foundation Establishment realm demonic creature to offer in sacrifice, the sheer number of tedious affairs was staggering. With both duties overlapping, he had been running nonstop for months. As one blessed by a talisman, he too had felt the strange phenomenon days ago. After the initial joy faded, a faint unease lingered in his heart. "I've heard that several sex cultivators have returned. Si Zunhui came back with rich gains and has already gone to the southern sea with Uncle Julio, yet Wang Quan still hasn't sent word." Li Jianqian bore no personal affection for the man, but Wang Quan was their family's sole Foundation Establishment realm cultivator within the Mifan Dao lineage. If he perished in the underground palace, who knew when they could reclaim that treasure sword? After much thought, and since Mayashui had recovered from her injuries and advanced in cultivation, the need for the family's Foundation Establishment realm manpower had finally loosened. He thus sent Mayashui to Chengshui Marsh to make contact. Before her surrender, she had roamed Zhongbei and understood its power balance as well, so she was less likely to cause trouble. As he pondered, Qi Juyan entered the hall, bowed, and reported, "Family head." Li Jianqian had summoned him. He courteously invited him to rise and said with a smile, "I've learned that several cultivator households in the Western residence have either invited guest cultivators, called in family members, or even taken to personally instructing their juniors in Dao discussion these past few days." Qi Juyan replied, "I have heard of it as well, my lord. It is hard to criticize." "It's fine," Li Jianqian said, "but we cannot let them monopolize it. Please gather a few guest cultivators and establish an academy in Milan as well. Have them teach the mortal family members free of charge. Once the first few batches pass their examinations, we can rotate the instructors out." Chapter 1246, Within Mifan I. Qi Juyan responded with a hum, but Li Jianqian shook his head and said, "The people of Purple Smoke Gate have been moved to the Eastern Sea, and their crafting speed grows worse by the day. Still, since the Taoist master has yet to return, letting things drag a little is fine. The family is stable now, so it's no great matter. Dharma Protector Qi often stays at the eastern shore. Do you know of news from Jiangxia's side?" Li Jianqian pointed at several letters on the desk. Judging from their seals and formatting, it was almost certain they had come from Li Jiangxia. He frowned and said, "The families along the eastern shore and in the wilderness under its control have suddenly fallen silent for several consecutive months. The number of disciples traveling toward Milan has also sharply declined. It's supposed to be the triennial mountain entry, yet hardly anyone is coming. This is no simple matter." Eastern Shore held 118 families, and its vassal territories stretched into the wilderness. Over the years, Li Jiangxia had been nibbling away at them like ants and silkworms. Though the capital Immortal Dao had struck once, its foundation was never shaken. Though people still called it the Eastern Shore, that term could no longer fully describe its reach. If the wilderness were divided into 5 parts, the Li family now effectively controlled the western 2. Those regions were vital sources of spiritual materials, and now that they were to forge the purple stable valley penetrating mountain profound pin, they were all the more crucial. He could not afford to overlook them. Qi Juyan nodded and replied, "I've already received the reports, and the cause has been investigated. The Grace Covenant Gate of Shanji Prefecture in the east has gradually stabilized its footing in recent years. Its cultivators are recruiting disciples widely. This group of devil cultivators seems intent on imitating Chengyun Gate, and with Purple Smoke Gate backing them, they now wish to convert to the Orthodox Tao. They lack low-level cultivators in their sect, so they have lowered their standards, only requiring that cultivators have clean origins, preferably from Jiangnan. Shanji is bordered to the north by Xuanmiao Temple, and its sides are flanked by supreme Yang Dao lineages, leaving the wilderness as the main source of cultivators. But the wilderness is full of rogue cultivators, uneven in skill and strength, with scattered and disordered Dao lineages. Even if Grace Covenant Gate lowers its requirements further, few would still qualify. On the other hand, the wilderness borders the eastern shore. The families of the eastern shore have been training disciples seasonally these past years, preparing them for selection by Milan. They've focused on consolidating cultivation and laying solid foundations instead of rushing ahead. But now that Grace Covenant Gate has thrown open its doors, everyone has gone eastward to try their luck. The vassal territories, where most families focused on mining and planting for offerings, lay beyond the eastern shore. Unlike the lake's prefectures, which belonged clearly within established factions, they did not need to negotiate comings and goings like Dingmu did. Li Zhongqian did not appear anxious and merely nodded. True enough, our family has plenty of guest cultivators, bound by endless rules and enjoying little pleasure. Their prospects for advancement can't compare to those of Grace Covenant Gate. How could it ever be as comfortable as being a disciple of a Purple Mansion Realm Gate? Hui Juyan bowed and replied, "What the family head says is true, but the profound Grace Dao lineage only uses them to make up numbers. Those who join as outer disciples lack sufficient cultivation time and have inadequate resources. It may not be as pleasant as it seems." "That doesn't matter. Everyone has their own aspirations. We are not short of people." Li Zhongqian lifted his gaze slightly, his eyes dark as he stared at the scroll on the table and said, "What I fear is that they all enter the profound Grace Dao lineage one by one. Today one is taken, tomorrow another. When more than 100 families have all been drawn to strengthen the east, what will happen to the west?" Hui Juyan hesitated, then nodded softly and said, "The third young master has cultivated and accumulated strength for many years. It might be better to consolidate the eastern shore and the wilderness territory and establish peak offices there. But forcing over 100 families into fear and unrest will not be easy to manage." The crimson-robed youth shook his head. "The peak offices cannot be expanded lightly, nor can we swallow over 100 families at once. That would disgrace our family's name. These eastern shore families serve as a means for the families on the shore to stand above the lower cultivators, maintaining unity through a sense of superiority. Besides, these families are remnants from the era of the Jiang and Yu families a century ago. The Yu family is too weakened to move, but why did the Jiang family not act back then? Why did the Xiao family not act either? The rule that the Azure Pond sect cannot cross prefectures or me. RGE territories was not made without cause. It comes from the ancient Moonlight Origin Mansion, where only sects under the mansion's authority could span multiple states. Even the Purple Smoke Gate keeps strictly within its allotted borders. Secondly, this prevents direct contact with other Purple Mansion realm powers. Our family manages its vassal families through Milan, just as the Xiao family governs theirs through Mount Yu. It is the same principle. Li Zhongqian pondered slightly as he looked at the map boundaries, and mused, "The wilderness borders the Xiao family's lands as well, now near Mount Yu. No doubt many have gone there to cultivate. If the Xiao family under Lixia has shown no response, that will be troublesome." He looked up and asked, "Do all the families still have people stationed in Milan? Withdraw your men at once. As for those who went to Grace Covenant Gate but failed to join, ensure that Milan does not take them either. I'll send someone east to make inquiries. Dai Jingquan from the profound Grace Dao lineage seems approachable. We'll speak to him first." Li Zhongqian gestured for Hui Juyan to leave. Soon after, he saw someone coming up from below the hall. Dili Guang had gone south to the southern sea with Li Zhuluo, and now a man of the Du family arrived, bowing respectfully as he reported, "Family head, the guest cultivator Mayashui has returned." Li Zhongqian's expression brightened with concern, and he immediately raised his brows and asked, "Alone, or has she returned with guest cultivator Wang?" The man replied, "3 people came back together. They've arrived at the side courtyard, and it said their injuries are quite severe." Li Zhongqian's brows immediately furrowed, and he went down the steps just as the 3 entered. Mayashui's breathing was steady, though her clothes were a little disheveled, and she bowed first. Wang Quan followed with a sword at his waist, his face pale. The last person was unfamiliar. His face was covered in cold sweat, and his clothes stained with blood. Golden astral chi had entered his body and frozen his limbs purple as he stiffly offered a bow. Li Zhongqian let out a hearty laugh, descended from the platform, and took Wang Quan's hand, smiling as he said, "Quan, you are truly gifted by heaven, safe and sound at last." Then he turned toward the unfamiliar face and asked in puzzlement, "And this one is?" Wang Kuan clasped his fists and answered, "This is Taoist Shouting of Jingyi Mountain. He fought beside me in the underground palace, was injured, and escaped that perilous place with me. Considering the journey to the Eastern Sea is long and must pass through the Chunyi Dao Gates territory, we feared ambush, so I invited him to rest at the lake." Jingyi Mountain. Li Jianqian immediately studied him. Taoist Shouting appeared no older than a youth, with narrow eyes and a somewhat plain face. Perhaps he had suffered backlash from a spell art. His hair and beard were withered, and he was so wounded by a golden astral chi-type spell that he could not even speak. Chapter 1247, Within Mifan II. Back in the matter of the Profound Peak Gate, Changxi gifted Yuzhu Island to Jingyi Mountain, which should have made them allies under the Profound Peak Gate lineage. Yet not a single person from Jingyi Mountain had appeared from beginning to end, not even to send a portion of tribute. They had left the Kong family struggling in Jiangnan, which had indirectly caused Li Ziming to be trapped without recourse. To put it bluntly, Sumian had at least spoken a few words, while Taoist Master Xuan Yi did not even open his mouth to whisper. The direct descendants of the Profound Peak Gate bore deep resentment over this. Although Xuanmiao Temple suffered no real losses, Sumian likewise held great displeasure toward Xuan Yi. His own family had suffered greatly, and Jingyi Mountain was never spoken of kindly within their family. Jingyi Mountain happened to have few connections in Jiangnan. They had coincidentally met Wang Kuan, and now had found their way to the Li family. Only someone as calculating as Li Jianqian could receive them with a smiling, polite demeanor as he said, "So you are a guest from the Jingyi Immortal Mountain. It is only right that you be treated with courtesy. Please cultivate within our cave dwelling. Should you need any supplies, simply ask." Taoist Shouting's face had turned purple, his lips trembling. He forced out a faint reply before coughing blood. He could not even utter formal words. Li Jianqian had Wang Kuan remain seated in the hall and sent Maiyashui to escort the others away. Only then did he return to his seat, already forming a plan in his mind. "I wonder whether this man can keep his mouth shut. Since he's from Jingyi Mountain, it would be best to probe him subtly to find out just what kind of relationship Changxi and Xuan you really have." He smiled and said, "Congratulations." How was it inside the underground palace? As he spoke, his gaze lingered on Wang Kuan with quiet intent. From Wang Kuan's earlier words and bearing, he must have exchanged much with Taoist Shouting in the underground palace. As a disciple of Jingyi Mountain, Taoist Shouting likely understood the secrets of the Mifan Dao lineage. That raised the question, had Wang Kuan already learned anything? When he asked, Wang Kuan quickly bowed, drew a large box from his sleeve, and opened it before him. Inside lay a red bead chain and an earthen yellow long shield, the very same muddy red jade treasure and 100-stone spirit shield that had been lent out. He started, "Family head, there were further mysteries in that underground palace. When we reached its deepest point, we entered an earth vein, then another within it. There, we saw a pool of converging water, within which lay hidden worlds. Upon entering that pool, we found a palace with the inscription Great Mijuafen. The long plaques on both sides had been stolen. Once we crossed that palace, torrents of water, fire, and thunder descended upon us. We flew and evaded them for what felt like a year. First, the water, fire, and thunder were not too strong, but the water was converging water and the fire was merging fire. The longer it burned, the fiercer it grew. Thunder frequently struck us, shattering our spell arts. Fortunately, with the 2 Dharma artifacts bestowed by our family, especially the muddy red jade treasure for protection and my floating cloud body technique to strengthen myself, I managed to cross. Li Jianqian immediately felt something was wrong. Could that have been a grotto heaven? But how could a Foundation establishment realm cultivator fly for over a year and still remain trapped in the same place? What sense would that make? Wang Kuan continued, "It was only after crossing the water, fire, and thunder that we saw a stone bridge. According to Taoist Shouting, that bridge was forged from a majestic earth spirit item, with a grand formation laid upon it that suppressed our spiritual sense. I groped my way halfway across and saw a stone stele inscribed with the words Metal Derivation Division. Then a box of water descended from the heavens, which I received. But after that, the path ahead vanished, and I was forced to turn back. When I returned, Taoist Shouting told me that the Metal Derivation Division required a metal virtue art to undo. I had not learned it, so I turned back, only to find the exit changed. Inside, the others seemed to be fighting over something. I hid myself, and after about a year, when a group of them moved aside, I secretly escaped. But as soon as we emerged from that converging water pool, a band of devil cultivators ambushed us. Thankfully, our Dharma artifacts held strong, though poor Taoist Shouting suffered terribly. Seeing his cultivation was the highest, they assumed all treasures were on him and attacked relentlessly until he had exhausted every talisman his master had given him." Li Jianqian listened in silence before asking, Taoist shouting from Jingyi Mountain. How did he come to be there? Wang Kuan answered briefly and clearly. He was gravely injured, but he knew the way out. Taoist shouting led me from the palace, and I protected him along the way. A trace of curiosity flickered in Li Jianqian's heart. Xuanyi knows this much about the Miffin. It seems that Jingyi Mountain may indeed be a force to rely upon if I wish to obtain that treasure sword. Having said this, Wang Kuan bowed slightly, then drew out a box from his storage pouch. Opening it before Li Jianqian, he revealed a pool of translucent, glimmering spirit water and said respectfully, "This subordinate does not recognize this spirit item, but fortunately I brought it back for the family." Li Jianqian immediately frowned and replied, "What are you saying? That opportunity was yours to begin with." He glanced at it, recognized it at once, and said, "This is pure origin spirit water. It can be used to cultivate perception technique arts. Keep it well. It's precisely one portion, and it will be of great benefit to you." Before Wang Kuan could respond, Li Jianqian waved his hand and said, "Anything you obtained within the Dao collection counts entirely as your own." Wang Kuan hesitated for a moment, then put it away and bowed lightly, saying solemnly, "Family head, I did discover one thing. I fought many cultivators within the underground palace. The deeper we went into the earth veins, the stronger the cultivators became, yet their immortal foundations grew increasingly uniform with just a few kinds repeated. In private, Taoist shouting told me that those who entered the underground palace were grouped according to similar Dao lineages." Li Jianqian did not comment, unsure whether it was truth or falsehood. He rubbed the jade cup in his hand thoughtfully, as though having reached a decision, and finally spoke, "So it is as I thought." Wang Kuan showed a doubtful expression, but Li Jianqian shook his head and said, "This matter concerns the Purple Mansion realm. I have a few speculations, listen well." Wang Kuan bowed immediately, clearly harboring long-held doubts. Li Jianqian's tone grew serious as he said, "If my guess is correct, that underground palace was built by Chengyun Gate. The devil cultivators outside the pool were also theirs. They discovered a certain Dao lineage beneath the ground that can only be accessed through cultivators possessing the corresponding immortal foundation. So they distributed command tokens to such cultivators, sent them into the palace, and then killed them off when their purpose was served." His expression darkened as he continued. "When Floating Cloud Cave was destroyed back then, its cultivation methods and resources were distributed by the other two caves. The technique you cultivate comes from Brahma Cloud Cave, which was backed by Chengyun Gate. It seems their original intent was to lure one of our family's disciples to the converging water pool and kill them there. That place likely didn't even count as a true divine ability ground. Fortunately, you were cautious, refrained from competing for treasures, broke through Foundation establishment realm with the Taoist master's bestowed pill, and escaped unharmed." Wang Kuan froze slightly, but Li Jianqian smiled and shook his head as he said, "Still, the Taoist master's foresight is beyond you or me. Perhaps he had long seen through Chengyun Gate's schemes and valued you greatly, so he specially granted you the pill to achieve your breakthrough mid-battle. In the end, their trick became your opportunity." Li Jianqian subtly rearranged his account, casually mentioning Li Ziming to shift the focus of the tale. With his open and measured tone, he neatly covered the fact that he had not warned them earlier. Wang Kuan's face gradually showed astonishment as he pieced it all together, then exhaled deeply. Li Xuanxuan's gift of Dharma artifacts had been sincere and truly meant to preserve his life. Neither Li Jianqian nor Li Zhuliuo had claimed any share of his spoils, making their stance clear. Wang Kuan bowed and said softly, "I only regret that my cultivation was too shallow to fight with full strength, wasting the opportunity granted by the Taoist master's favor." "That's of no consequence," Li Jianqian smiled faintly. "From what you've said, that place is far beyond what a few Foundation establishment realm cultivators can fully explore in one attempt. Go and find Sun Bai for treatment first. I'll write a letter to the master of Jiyushan Pavilion. We'll surely gain something from it." Chapter 1248, Marriage I. Li Jianqian sent Wang Kuan down to treat his wounds. After a while, he saw a woman emerge from the side hall, dressed in white with a light cyan skirt. Upon seeing her, Li Jianqian finally showed a genuine smile and said, "Greetings, Aunt Xinghan, congratulations." Li Xinghan had just emerged from seclusion and was surprised to find that her nephew had already reached the Foundation establishment realm. She smiled at him first and nodded. "It is I who should congratulate you. I just came out of seclusion and heard about the Grace Covenant Gate incident. How audacious of them." "Not at all," Li Jianqian shook his head, dismissed the nearby cultivators, shut the door, and replied with a faint smile. "This alone shows that the Grace Covenant Gate will never become a major threat. Taoist Master Zhugo may be decent in cultivation, but her governance is worse than none at all. Her sect is filled with useless fools. At their core, they are still devil cultivators from the outer sea, incapable of understanding, let alone adapting to the rules of Jiangnan." I can tell Zhugong is trying to imitate Cheng Yen-gate's methods, but she's no Taoist master Cheng Yun, and she has no Zhang Qian under her. Why could Cheng Yen-gate turn to the orthodox Tao so quickly? It was because Taoist master Cheng Yun's devil cultivators were all those who surrendered during the North-South conflict. As a true Taoist master, he killed whenever he wished. He was utterly ruthless and thus feared. The Taoist master Zhugong came with family and disciples of many years, this one a junior and that one a relative. Can she kill them as she pleases? A large ship is hard to turn. Even my Li family must deliberate before changing one rule. What can the Grace Covenant Gate possibly do? Though the profound Grace Tao lineage had recently risen to prominence, he held little regard for the Grace Covenant Gate and merely said, "The habits of devil cultivators are not so easily cleansed. They were reckless before, and I fear she will torment everyone along the eastern shore. If one of her peak masters loses control and provokes our family, it will not be a pleasant sight." Li Zhenghe. And finally felt relieved after hearing him out. With Li Zhuluo gone, Li Zhuming indifferent, and Li Chenghuai returning to seclusion after one brief appearance, she had become the only senior cultivator in the household, and it had left her anxious. Li Zhongqian's confident words buoyed her, and she replied calmly, "It's good that you have a plan, but I have another thought. The Grace Covenant Gate is openly recruiting disciples without discrimination. I heard that the Yuan and Yu families have already sent people to join. Should we?" Li Zhongqian shook his head slightly and said, "They still have Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators maintaining the sect. They won't let it fall into chaos. The people we send wouldn't reach the upper ranks anyway. It would only draw attention, especially those of us with Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. There's no need to send any direct descendants to leave a handle against us. Let's see if any collateral branches are willing to go." The ones who went over are far inferior not only to Kuai and Quexi, but are worlds apart even compared to Dingmu. I sent someone to Purple Smoke Gate a few days ago to deliver resources, and heard that Taoist Cow treats him quite well. Even his embryonic breathing realm technique was carefully chosen among the finest. After sighing, he suddenly recalled something and asked with a faint smile, "During your years in seclusion, there's a man surnamed Zhuang cultivating on the western shore. He has often written asking for an audience. Are you aware of this, Aunt?" Li Xinghin looked a little embarrassed about the topic and replied, "I know of him. His name is Zhuang Pingai. His father, Zhuang Cheng, is a well-known rogue cultivator from the Smoke Valley Desert, famed there for his art of the talisman sword. I happened to encounter him one day when I went to the desert to subdue demonic creatures. We exchanged a few words on the road, and out of courtesy I said we might meet again. I did not expect him to actually come to the lake afterward." He had pursued her all the way from the desert to the lake. Anyone could see what that meant. Li Zhongqian hesitated and asked, "I've heard he's one of the most handsome men around, with good looks and a respectable family. His family's sword art is said to be quite unique. What does Aunt think of his character? Do you find him bothersome?" That was clearly his way of asking about Li Xinghin's thoughts. She raised an eyebrow slightly and replied, "He is polite in all things and not annoying at all. His background is decent, and he seems quite sincere at present. My uncle once asked Elder Dong to inquire about him through acquaintances in the desert. They said his reputation there is proper enough, though not exactly a philanderer. He does frequent pleasure houses and wine halls from time to time, but such habits are common in that region. Nothing much to make of it. After all, he's the son of an esteemed family and already a roaming Qi cultivation realm cultivator. Such things are inevitable." Li Xinghin shook her head and finished, "I think he simply finds me suitable, good-looking, higher in innate ability than he is, and with a family that could aid him. There is little affection to speak of. When I traveled through the northern shore and the desert, I met others like him, only none with such a distinguished background, though my family does seem to like him very much." Li Zhongqian hadn't expected such an answer and asked, "Then what do you mean to do, Aunt?" Li Xinghin pressed her lips into a smile and replied, "For now he seems sincere. Let him continue cultivating on the western shore. After all, the pursuit of cultivation is the orthodox way. I am not him, so I cannot speak for his heart. There's no need to assume the worst. Time will reveal all." Li Zhongqian couldn't help but glance at her again and said, "I thought you would be more flustered, Aunt. You seem quite at ease." Li Xinghin shook her head with a laugh and said, "You underestimate me. Back when I was cultivating and practicing swordsmanship on the northern shore, several young talents from the Fei family deliberately crossed paths with me. When I rejected them once, the Fei family broke their legs, leaving me quite embarrassed." As the two were talking, someone soon came rushing in from outside the hall. His legs gave out beneath him, and he fell to his knees with a thud. He bowed deeply as he said, "Family head, Taoist Master Hufu of the great Ziyuqi Temple has appeared on the island. He requests to see you and the old elder." What? Li Zhongqian froze for a moment. Both he and Li Xinghin were visibly shocked. That Taoist master from the great Ziyuqi Temple, with no ties to us at all, why has he come knocking at our door? Li Ziming was not one who kept wide acquaintances, so this sudden visit caught everyone off guard. No one could have expected him to come, and it was surely more trouble than blessing. Li Jianqian felt a chill sink into his heart. This is trouble. Since a Purple Mansion realm cultivator had arrived on the island, it was a meeting that had to take place immediately. There could be no delay. Rather than inviting the visitor in, it was proper for Li Jianqian and the others to go pay their respects in person. It was a small detail, yet it mattered greatly for the prideful Taoist master Hufu. He rose swiftly from his seat and left the main hall for the side chamber together with Li Xinghan. From the doorway, they saw a young man in black shamanic robes seated at the main seat. Beside him stood a woman in white with a gray skirt, a gem of unknown origin adorning the center of her brow. Her beauty was striking. Li Jianqian led the bows and said respectfully, Junior Li Jianqian of the Moongay's immortal family, current family head of the Li family, greets Taoist master Hufu. Perhaps moved by his impeccable manners, Hufu appeared amiable and nodded as he said, Rise. Li Jianqian stood but did not take a seat, waiting respectfully to the side. Li Xuanxuan soon arrived from Qingdu, and the elder saluted as well. Hufu lifted his brows and said, I was traveling overseas when, by chance, I journeyed for some time with your family's Taoist master Zheajing. Before we parted ways, he heard I was returning inland and entrusted me with a message. Our deepest thanks, Taoist master. Li Jianqian repeatedly expressed his gratitude. Li Xuanxuan felt a wave of relief. He could tell from this that Li Ziming was unharmed, and tears nearly came to his eyes. Li Xinghan also let out a long breath, her worried expression giving way to joy. Hufu then gestured toward Zia Xiaoyu and said, This young lady was also entrusted to me by Zheajing. He wished me to bring her back and introduce her to one of his juniors for marriage. She is a descendant of a high cultivator from the outer sea. Li Xuanxuan had already been observing Zia Xiaoyu, thinking she might be some distinguished cultivator from the great Ziyuqi temple and admiring her refined bearing. When he heard this, his eyes lit up. Zhuming is no longer young. I thought Ziming wasn't paying attention, but he had already made arrangements. Excellent. He's reached Purple Mansion realm and now handles matters thoroughly. Chapter 1249, Marriage, II. At that, Li Jianqian finally confirmed that Li Ziming's situation must be stable. His heart settled with reassurance, and he murmured a soft acknowledgement. Hufu, however, seemed unwilling to linger and said calmly, I spoke pleasantly with Zheajing. He cannot return to the lake for some time, but he has sent Xiaoyu with a message. Let the family remain peaceful and self-restrained. I still have urgent matters in the west and cannot afford even a moment's delay. The great western plains remain embroiled in endless war. Meanwhile, the drought has lasted 9 years in the land of Shu. Local families have collapsed, sects are fleeing, and people have traded their own children for food. Each moment lost means hundreds of thousands more deaths. I will not stay to speak further. Without waiting for a reply, he stepped into the great void and vanished. The others respectfully saw him off. The gleam in Li Jianqian's sharp eyes shifted. The Shu region's great drought, no rain for years. When the land burns dry and the springs run empty, it must be a sign of pristine water fruition attainment. As Li Jianqian contemplated the state of pristine water, Li Xuanxuan turned to Zia Xiaoyu. The elder stepped forward and asked, I am Li Xuanxuan, elder of the Li family, young lady. I dare not. Zia Xiaoyu quickly bent forward and drew 2 scrolls from her sleeve, one red and one gold. Holding them with both hands, she first offered the golden one to Li Xuanxuan and said politely, Old senior, the Taoist master asked me to deliver these to your family. The golden scroll is for the household by the lake, and the red one is my marriage contract. She showed no shyness, speaking with composure. It is with a member of your Zhou generation, named Ming. Seeing his earlier guess confirmed, Li Xuanxuan accepted the golden scroll with a nod and a smile, saying, Young lady, that child is the Taoist master's only direct grandson. Surprise flickered in Zia Xiaoyu's eyes. She froze for a moment, then her lips curved upward as she stepped forward slightly and said at once, Has he come out of seclusion yet? I would be honored to meet the family. Li Xuanxuan had already taken out the scroll, and Li Jianqian extended a hand with a smile, Please. The visit from Taoist Master Hufu seemed to have swept away the cloud that had hung over the Li family's hearts. Everyone's steps felt lighter. As he walked behind them, Li Xuanxuan couldn't resist unrolling the scroll to read. Li Ziming had written nothing alarming, he mentioned. That his injuries had healed well and that the family need not worry. He would remain in seclusion outside for some time and had asked Ding Weizeng, Qi Juyan, and a few others to take care of family affairs. He had, however, specifically mentioned the capital Immortal Dao, advising Li Jianqian and the others not to let relations with the north turn too rigid and to reconcile while there was still time. Chang Xiao is scheming from the shadows, and the situation remains uncertain. Do not draw Yehui into conflict, lest you face enemies on both sides and find yourselves trapped. Li Xuanxuan rolled up the golden scroll and put it away. When they reached the main hall, Li Jiangqian took the scroll to read and sent someone to summon Li Zhuming. However, there was still no reply after a long while. A sense of unease crept over Li Xuanxuan. Sure enough, the messenger soon returned looking awkward and whispered to Li Jiangqian, "I could not find the young master. He has gone out for leisure and has yet to return around the lake." Given the Li family's control over the Qingdu and Jade Court Mountains, there was no way they could truly lose track of Li Zhuming. It was obvious he was lingering among women again. Li Jiangqian's expression grew slightly awkward, but Xia Xiaoyu caught on instantly and said with a bright smile, "It's no matter. The timing is perfect for a spring outing. I'll go along. It need not disturb the young master's mood." Li Xuanxuan immediately realized she was a woman of her own mind. He decided to cover for Li Zhuming. This matter would have to happen sooner or later anyway. Better to face it openly. He sighed inwardly and replied, "Indeed, it's best to go together." Li Jiangqian had just finished reading the scroll and put it away thoughtfully before asking, "May I ask, which immortal mountain or pavilion outer sea does your esteemed Dao belong to? It would be an honor to know." Xia Xiaoyu smiled gently and replied, "My elders merely cultivate upon an immortal mountain, not one of any great renown. Taoist Master Zheajing has shown great kindness to both my family and myself. While he and 3 other Taoist masters were discoursing on the Tao in the mountains, the matter of marriage was mentioned, and thus this union was granted. As for which path of cultivation my family elders follow, I fear revealing it might expose the Taoist master's whereabouts. It would be improper to say more at present. Once the Taoist master returns and grants permission, I shall explain in full. I beg your understanding." Her answer was flawless. Li Jiangqian smiled and nodded. "Not at all, though you have yet to join the family. You are already half a senior. There is no need to apologize to your junior. You flatter me." The group departed the island together on the wind. Suddenly, a streak of heavenly light came speeding from the lake's edge. It was Li Zhuming, clad in a crimson robe with his fan hanging at his waist, hastily flying toward the center of the lake. The moment Li Jiangqian saw him, he knew the next few moments would be awkward. Li Xuanxuan had lectured and scolded this junior countless times, but he had never been able to control him. Anger surged once again, yet with Xia Xiaoyu present, he restrained himself and turned his head aside to spare the boy some dignity. Xia Xiaoyu appeared perfectly composed as she gave a graceful bow and said, "Greetings, young master." Li Zhuming had been glancing nervously at Li Xuanxuan, expecting a scolding, but when he found the old man silent, his confusion lasted only a moment, until his eyes fell on the beautiful young woman before him. His gaze lit up with delight, and he quickly said with a nod, "Greetings, lady." As he came closer, he realized that Xia Xiaoyu was already at the foundation establishment realm. Though he was of noble birth, as a mere Qi cultivation realm cultivator, addressing someone of her rank so casually made him uneasy. Yet when Xia Xiaoyu smiled faintly and nodded, a touch of shy grace softening her beauty, he couldn't help but lift his chin with newfound confidence. Li Xuanxuan shot him a warning glare, unsure if the boy even understood, and spoke in a gravelly voice, "This is Fairy Xia, the daughter of a cultivator from an outer sea immortal mountain. Not only is her innate ability extraordinary and her cultivation high, but her temperament is gentle, and her appearance like that of a celestial fairy. She is your grandfather's chosen fiancé for you. And where were you wandering about on the day she comes to meet you?" "Oh." Li Zhuming froze in disbelief. Though his grandfather Li Ziming had granted him his noble status, the old man had never paid him much attention. It was Li Xuanxuan who had raised him. Hearing this sudden revelation, his face split into an irrepressible grin as his thoughts tumbled in delight. So it was grandfather. Grandfather's divine ability truly is P. Erlis, worthy of the bearing of a true Taoist master. Wonderful, wonderful. He's found me such a gentle and lovely wife. I'll never curse him in my heart again. Never. I won't even let my father complain about him. From now on, I'll praise him to everyone I meet. What an amazing grandfather, he. Chapter 1250, Evil Cicada, I. Li Zhuming immediately swept his sleeve aside, lifted his head, and said joyfully in a loud voice, "So it was grandfather's message. I've long been worried for him. To think he still remembers me. Has he left any instructions?" He turned to Xia Xiaoyu with a smile and said, "The Taoist master granted this marriage, yet never mentioned it to me. May I know your honored name, lady?" His words were courteous and proper. Xia Xiaoyu responded with a faint smile, pausing to let the old elder speak first. Li Xuanxuan's expression eased slightly as he replied, "So you still think of the Taoist master. He is currently traveling in the Eastern Sea. Everything is going well." Only then did Xia Xiaoyu speak. to reply to the young master, "My name is Zia Xiaoyu, a cultivator of the Eastern Sea." Li Zhuming quickly unfastened the fan at his waist and said, "Please, allow me to take you for a walk around the lake. We can speak of the Taoist master as we go." Since it was their first meeting, Zia Xiaoyu did not sense anything amiss. She smiled and stepped forward to join him. Li Xuanxuan found the situation strange and at a loss for words, so he simply nodded in acknowledgement as the two left together. The old man didn't know whether to laugh or scold, muttering inwardly, "This boy is usually foolish, mischievous, and never serious about anything. 9 out of 10 things he says are incoherent. Yet the moment he sees a woman, it's as if he's suddenly enlightened, clear-headed and sharp-tongued, with every word right on point. No wonder none of those girls by the lake ever caused a scene with him." Li Zhongqian waited quietly beside him, lost in thought. Now that they had Li Ziming's 2 scrolls, the direct descendants would naturally need to convene for discussion. He entered the main hall with the elder and shut the doors behind them. Li Xuanxuan sighed. It's a relief that the Taoist master is safe. It seems he chose this Lady Zia personally. She seems exceptionally clever, and her family must be distinguished. Li Zhongqian guided him toward the main seat. Once the old man had sat down, he stood to the side and poured tea, speaking quietly. "She speaks skillfully. It's impossible to draw anything from her, and wisely so, since we mustn't risk exposing the Taoist master's whereabouts. But I noticed her attire. It was elegant, yes, yet not of the highest quality. If she truly came from a remarkable background, she would at least carry a Foundation Establishment realm Dharma artifact or spirit-bound boots. Yet I saw none. Perhaps my eyes are dull, and I failed to recognize a concealed treasure, or perhaps her finer Dharma artifacts remain unused." Since Zia Xiaoyu was to become a senior member of the family, Li Zhongqian spoke with great subtlety. Yet Li Xuanxuan caught his meaning and said with some doubt, "That's true, though she did mention several times that only her elders cultivate on an immortal mountain, and that her own family is not wealthy. It sounds reasonable enough." Li Zhongqian nodded. He was free to speak more candidly in front of Li Xuanxuan, and replied, "My guess is that even if she does have elders cultivating on an immortal mountain, Lady Zia likely belongs to a collateral or declining branch of a main bloodline. The Taoist master's journey to the outer sea may not have been part of his original plan. Perhaps he made a compromise with some Tao lineage and asked them to look after him. This marriage agreement might have arisen from that. Since it was our side seeking favor, they wouldn't have sent a prodigy or a crucial heir in return. This is merely a private speculation, but all things considered, it's for the best. None of the female cultivators by the lake compares to Lady Zia. The Taoist master's foresight surely surpasses ours." Li Xuanxuan nodded. Just as Li Zhongqian lifted his head thoughtfully, a knock sounded from outside the hall. He waved his sleeve and the doors opened by themselves. Chen Yang was waiting outside. He hurried forward and whispered, "Family head, someone has arrived from the Azure Pond sect." Li Zhongqian frowned and asked, "Who from the Azure Pond sect, and under what pretext?" Chen Yang lowered his voice even more and replied, "The visitor is Li Quantao, Peak Master of Fuchen Peak. He claims to be a close friend of the Jiyushan Pavilion Master." Li Zhongqian did not recall the name, but when Li Xuanxuan heard it, he immediately nodded and said, "Oh, it's that young man. Quickly, invite him in at once." Though Li Quantao and the Moongaze Li family had seldom interacted in recent years, their ties ran deep, dating back to Li Quantao's father, Li Yancheng. Li Quantao himself had once saved Li Zijai's life, so Li Xuanxuan held him in high regard. He turned to Li Zhongqian and said, "He treated us well back then. Now that our family has become a Purple Mansion realm immortal family, it is all the more reason not to keep him waiting. We mustn't give the impression that we've grown arrogant and ungrateful, lest misunderstandings arise." Li Quantao entered as he spoke, wearing a robe patterned with rippling waves of blue. The spirited youth of years past had become a courteous middle-aged man, bowing repeatedly in greeting. Li Xuanxuan, seated in the main seat, gestured for Li Quantao to enter. Li Zhongqian invited him to sit nearby. The man looked around with a sigh of amazement and said, "Your esteemed family has changed so greatly. It's almost unrecognizable. You and Zijai were like brothers in those days. You even called him Brother Zijai. There's no need for such formality." Li Xuanxuan replied with a warm smile and pointed to a nearby seat. "Have you encountered any trouble? Or perhaps a junior from your sect needs a pill refined? Speak freely." Li Quantao still seemed somewhat restrained. He had recently married the younger sister of Si Tongyi from the Si family. With their support, he had no worries about his children's cultivation. Yet his expression carried a faint melancholy as he nodded and said, "I've been ordered by my sect to investigate certain matters in the Shanji region. Since I was passing by the lake, I thought to pay a visit and speak for a while." He said quietly, "I just came from the Mushroom Forest Plain. The place is in utter chaos. Yuan Hudu, head of the Yuan family, died suddenly when his old injuries relapsed. Now Yuan Zibin has seized control of the family. He imprisoned the elder Yuan Haiyuan and hung his uncles Yuan Fao and Yuan Fui from the mountaintop, whipping and tormenting them for sport, calling them his herd of swine. They've fainted and revived multiple times. It's horrifying. He's also conscripted over 1,000 women into the mountains. The land is filled with their cries. Li Xuanxuan frowned and asked, "Has Yuan Chengzhou made any statement?" At the mention of Li Zijai's junior brother, Yuan Chengzhou, Li Quantao shook his head and said, "He remains in seclusion. But such incidents are hardly rare. They've happened everywhere, though this one's more sensational because it involves imprisoning and humiliating elders. Otherwise, it would barely be noteworthy. It is nothing compared to the fallen imperial line of Chu in the old days. My father used to say there were even cases of patricide within the cultivation world. That Changxiao Gate cultivator of earth virtue took his own elder sister as his Dao companion. It's common among minor sects that have lost their divine abilities suppression. When the one in power gains strength and status, their desires often run unchecked, turning to brutality. In the old days, the sects could still maintain order. Now, each can barely care for itself, and such things only grow more frequent." Li Xuanxuan saw that he was still holding something back. He waved his sleeve, dismissing everyone from the hall. Li Quantao still looked uneasy. Then, under the pretense of another errand, Li Xuanxuan sent Li Jiangqian away as well. The Azure Pond sect peak master, distantly related through Wei's Li bloodline, sighed deeply and spoke in a hushed tone after a moment. "There is some good news. Qin Xian, Peak Master Qin, has been promoted to the position of Yuanxing Peak's Peak Master. He is preparing to marry fellow Taoist Fei Qingyi." Matter between Fei Qingyi and Qin Xian, confidant of the Xi family, had long been rumored. That it was finally becoming official was significant news, but it clearly wasn't what Li Quantao truly came to say. Li Xuanxuan waited in silence, and sure enough, Li Quantao continued. "A few days ago, during Qin Xian's first days in office, it happened to be my duty rotation. Flames suddenly erupted from Azure Pond Sect's main peak, staining the sky crimson. I followed the sound and sensed a violent surge of spiritual energy. A cultivator had fallen. When I arrived first at the cave dwelling, I saw clear traces of excavation at the gate, indentations from Dharma artifacts striking stone. The formation had been dismantled by someone of remarkable skill." Chapter 1251, Evil Cicada II. A chill went through Li Xuanxuan's heart. He focused intently, watching Li Quantao's face pale as he continued in a low voice. "Then I felt something was terribly wrong. As I quietly descended the mountain, I saw my two sons, Li Kan and Li Xiangai, sneaking down from the slopes. The white iron cold sword they carried on their backs was already broken, but they still bore it with them." At this point, Li Xuanxuan understood his implication. He had not expected the Xi family to finally act at this moment. Li Quantao went on. "The next morning, word spread through the sect. It was said that the former sect master, Kai Jian, had failed in his breakthrough and perished that very night. The sect remained outwardly calm, but I could see, most carried a quiet grief." Weariness flickered across his face as he said softly, "We all knew something would happen, but still, I had hoped he would fail quietly, without calamity. My wife said it herself that his failure was certain when the spiritual aura suddenly fluctuated. None expected that it would be the fire virtue technique, dwelling heart, that charges profundity in the end. As the days drew near, everyone grew desperate, and thus came this outcome." Though he spoke calmly, unease and fear were plainly written on his face. After all, Kai Jian, the sect master of Azure Pond, was a generous and exceedingly brilliant man. He was merciful in discipline, bold in promotion, and truly a figure of rare talent. Under his rule, Azure Pond sect had been so well governed that everyone there had benefited from his grace. Even after Kai Jian's reckless tyranny had destroyed all of his confidants and the Xi family took control, every member of the Azure Pond sect still knew Kai Jian remained in seclusion. All carried silent guilt. No one ever dared to speak of it. Tantaijin had elevated many, yet none of them dared act without reading his expression. Now he had to rely on Qin Xian, a hastily promoted confidant, and send Li Quantao's two naive sons to do the deed. It was proof enough of how deeply the Xi family and Tantaijin feared exposure. Even so, there was still shared grief and sorrow among those beneath the Azure Pond sect, and the situation could not have been more awkward. Li Quantao grew even more distraught, his eyes glistening with tears as he said, he was a hero among men. During his seclusion, he was breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm, raising his Shenyang to the Great Void. Success was at hand, his heart barrier nearly broken, and his divine ability within reach. Yet his stone gate was pried open, and two mere Qi Cultivation Realm juniors entered with swords. They pierced his dantian, severed his head, and ended his life. If his spirit bears resentment, it would shake heaven and earth, and even that would not suffice to avenge him. Old elder, my elders have all passed. Brother Zijai and I were as close as kin, and you are my senior. Speaking frankly, when my father was targeted by the Kai family back then, Sect Master Kai shielded us many times. I was truly grateful to him. Now to call me ungrateful would not be wrong. Though a Foundation establishment realm cultivator, Li Quantao was drenched in cold sweat as tears streamed down his face. He bowed deeply and said in a trembling voice, "Those two are my own sons, yet they've done such a thing. My conscience alone chills my spine and I don't know what to do. I truly don't. Old elder, please, guide me." Li Quantao, born and raised on an immortal peak, had long been unfamiliar with worldly intrigue. Even after gaining experience, he still acted from conscience. He was an honest and kind man through and through, or he would never have saved Li Zijai back then. Terror now clouded his eyes. The old man opened his and said softly, "Do you know why they used you in this way?" Li Quantao nodded stiffly. "My father once had a feud with Kai Wei. They thought drawing me in would be easiest, and once bound, couldn't break free. But it dragged in brother Zijai as well. While I was in seclusion, my two sons must have met someone. Whoever instructed them, it no longer matters." Li Xuanxuan couldn't help but sip his hot tea to steady himself, coughing lightly before saying, "It's karma from the past. All of it stems from old causes. The fault is not yours." Li Quantao's eyes widened, his lips trembling as he said, "You too believe in karma, old elder. I thought Wei's Li line was the least superstitious of all. But if you accept that, then everything can be excused, and that is not right. If karma is real, then it was my father who sinned first by ambushing Kai Wei and seizing his Dao lineage." He seemed to have revealed more than he meant to and lowered his voice. Kai Wei was vile, yes, but Kai Jian was not without conscience. He tried to make amends, to treat those wronged with kindness. I know he had to die, that he'd be slain one way or another, but to kill him like this in such a way leaves me deeply unsettled. Even revenge must have its measure. If he had harmed my kin for personal gain, I would at most strike him down, but not drag his great-grandchildren in and tear them apart. If I were to do that, would I not be more monstrous than he? Shouldn't such deeds invite retribution? That is what I mean, old elder. Li Xuanxuan was left momentarily stunned, a heaviness settling in his chest. He drew out a pill from his sleeve, but Li Quantao waved him off. "Old elder, I am perfectly clear-minded. Lord Sea is in the southern sea. What Purple Mansion realm cultivator could possibly reach through the Azure Pond Sec's grand formation to affect me? I have turned this matter over in my heart for a long time. This is no momentary impulse." His gaze dimmed as he went on. "I understand your esteemed family also suffered deeply under the Kai family and bears hatred still, so you cannot understand me. Yet the old elder speaks truly. If there is karma, in the end it will fall upon me." Li Quantao bowed deeply, then left the hall. He looked dejected and spent as he walked away. Li Xuanxuan, forgetting to see him off, raised his cup and took several long sips of hot tea before the warmth finally returned to his limbs. After a while, Li Jiangqian approached with some surprise and asked, "Why did he leave without even looking back, old elder?" Rubbing his brow, Li Xuanxuan said softly, "Kai Jian has fallen." Li Jiangqian was unsurprised and nodded. It was only a matter of time. That it dragged on this long only shows how careless the Sea family has been. Then he frowned slightly and asked, "Was it he who told you this? Was he involved? If the Sea family wishes to pull him in, it cannot be with good intent. They might even be planning to drag our family down with them." The old man appeared troubled, nodded faintly, and rose to descend the steps. Casting a glance at Li Jiangqian, he coughed and said, "I had meant to speak with you anyway. At times Quyen seems gentle-natured, while you seem dependable. The two of you should balance each other more. Learn a bit from your sister. Not everything must be perfect or schemed to the end. You think too darkly. Honesty in dealings also has its virtue. You trust too little, and you like to polish every word for advantage. It often brings profit, yes, but it chills the hearts of those beside you." Li Jiangqian hadn't expected Li Xuanxuan to bring this up. He smiled naturally and replied, "My devotion to my sister and to you, old elder, has always been sincere. That much my heart can testify. Whatever embellishment I use in speech, you of all people know it's only to win benefits for the family. My conscience is clear." The old man descended the steps with a faint smile and said with a nod, "I've grown old and rambling. The affairs of the family will need your continued care. Thank you for your effort." He walked down the steps and unexpectedly did not return to Qingdu but headed instead toward the livelier part of the island. Li Jiangqian saw him off halfway, then turned back to the hall. He sat calmly in the main seat and tapped the table lightly, his eyes cold as he thought, "I've never seen the old elder act like that. Who has the audacity to whisper idle talk about me into his ear?" Chapter 1252, Bei Ci. Purple smoke blessed land. For centuries, ethereal purple qi had lingered among the mountains, dyeing heaven and earth a constant shade of purple. The scattered ranges revealed a sea of layered and undulating purple clouds, steeped in immortal grace. Radiant light drifted through the mountains as a woman in white and purple robes arrived riding the wind. Her face was round, her eyes bright, and her ears delicately small. Though her clothes were not especially ornate, they They were clean and proper, lending her a pleasing grace. Someone called out from halfway up the mountain, "Junior Sister Kwai." When she followed the voice, she saw a man hastily riding the wind toward her. When he reached her, he smiled and said, "You've returned quite early today." This was Li Kuai of the Purple Smoke Gate, now at the third stage of the Qi cultivation realm. She quickly bowed and greeted him. "Greetings, Senior Brother Huang. I was supposed to be practicing swordsmanship, but I received a sudden message from the gate. They're sending me to the Eastern Sea, so I came back early." For the past half year, the Purple Smoke Gate's Eastern Sea outpost had been beset by calamities, mountain collapses, tsunamis, shattered islands, and the shifting of both earth and fire veins. The gate was in disarray. Even half the personnel sent to Moongaze Lake had been transferred away. Knowing this, the second senior brother frowned and asked in puzzlement, "Why would they send you there? You've only cultivated for such a short time. How does that make sense? If something happens, how will they answer to your family? Does Master know about this?" He clearly understood Li Kuai's background. If she were sent out while still in the early Qi cultivation realm and something happened, the gate would never be able to explain it to the Li family. Li Kuai smiled in reply. "They're not sending me to fight, of course. I cultivate the Jade True Dao, and the island's formations are also of that lineage. I'll just be handling logistical work." "That makes more sense." Though he agreed aloud, worry still clouded his expression as he descended with her toward the peak. Purple Gale Peak's location was not bad. It was set on the right of the encircling mountains. If it were aligned a bit straighter, it would face Shepherd Peak on the opposite side. When the morning light rose, the whole scene gleamed golden. After much hesitation, Senior Brother Huang asked again, "About what we discussed last time, have you managed to find the white spur root needed for the virtuous treasure pill? There aren't many alchemists in the sect, so scheduling one's turn is troublesome. I'll need to book a slot early." He gave an embarrassed smile and said, "I don't mean to press you, Junior Sister, just borrowing a bit of help. Your senior brother's purse is tight, but once I gather enough resources, I'll repay you tenfold." A trace of weariness showed on Li Kuai's face, yet she forced a smile and said, "I've already written to ask about it. If there's any news, it will surely be sent over. Please don't worry, Senior Brother." The Purple Smoke Gate did not treat its disciples poorly, yet not every disciple came from an influential background. Ling Yanzi was a solitary old man, whose disciples were mostly from humble families or small clans of mere Qi cultivation realm heritage. The old fellow was hopeless at maintaining relationships, yet had a soft heart, always choosing to accept disciples of lesser standing. When he had once issued a Gay Tentry token to the Li family, they too had only been a Qi cultivation realm family. That second senior brother was now striving for the Foundation Establishment realm. The gate had already provided him with a portion of resources, and Ling Yanzi had offered some as well, but the more resources, the better, so he often turned to Li Kuai for help. Li Kuai was utterly weary. Everyone on the peak called her Junior Sister with such warmth, praising her more than anyone else, but their eyes were really fixed on what she carried in her pouch. If those items had been her own, it might not have mattered, but they were all begged from her family. She was forced to ask again and again, and each time it grew harder to open her mouth. Ling Yanzi had no sense for management. The senior brothers were not bad men, but even good men could grow ruthless for the sake of the Foundation Establishment realm. Time and again they came to her in private, humbling themselves to ask for aid. Each time Li Kuai picked up her brush to write home, grievance welled in her heart. "I never expected these senior brothers to be like Wenwu of Shepherd Peak, who arranges everything meticulously, selects the best techniques, and smooths relations with the pill and artifact peaks for his juniors. But must they press me again and again like this? I knew when I came that this peak's domain was poorer than the others. I thought if I simply behaved well and cultivated diligently, it would be fine. But who could have known how bitter such poverty could be? How could this not be suffering?" Ling Yanzi treated her kindly, but even he had privately requested resources from the Li family twice. Li Zhongqian had immediately seen the problem and mentioned it subtly in his letters. From that, Li Kuai understood that it was the cost of currying favor with Ling Yanzi. The old man had to support so many disciples that he did his best to stretch every spirit stone into two. A few days ago, Wenwu had brought Li Quexi to visit her, hoping to deepen their sisterly bond. She had no idea what kind of pills Shepherd Peak had provided her cousin, but the girl's cultivation speed was astonishing. Hearing that her cousin was even sending the spirit items she obtained back home made Li Kuai's heart grow dimmer still. Though she claimed that her trip to the Eastern Sea was an assignment from the gate, it had in truth been arranged privately. She had begged a senior sister from the Zio family within the Purple Smoke Gate to help her, all just to find a place to hide for a while. Yet Li Kuai could understand her senior brother's desperation to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm, so she could only speak humbly, "I don't ask for any repayment in the future. My family has some spare means, so let me help my brothers. I've already written home, and if they manage to send anything, it will be delivered to the master. I'm leaving for the outer sea soon. Senior brother may collect it from him directly." After a slight bow, she excused herself and returned to her room, feeling a chill settle over the entire peak, leaving her lost and helpless. How did it come to this? Poverty I could endure, but must fellow disciples, instead of helping one another, fight to take what little I have? Meanwhile, the prosperous Shepherd Peak brothers are generous and upright, clearing every obstacle for my cousin without hesitation. Bay Sea. Bay Sea was part of the Unison Sea region. Its waters were not vast. If one removed the reefs and small islands, the remaining sea was smaller than two splintered islands. Yet it was overflowing with spiritual treasures, the very essence of the Unison Sea. The Dragon clan had long upheld the ancient rule of sea herding. In past ages, the Dragon sons served as governors drifting among the seas, but now it resembled a feudal division. Each Dragon king ruled a fixed domain of the ocean, but those territories had always lain beyond the Unison Sea, scattered between the Quinee Strait and Shiki of the Scarlet Pristine Sea. Unison Sea itself was akin to the Dragon monarch's direct dominion and should not have been divided for sea herding. Yet there were exceptions. 3 Dragon kings over the past 1,000 years had been exceptionally favored and enfeoffed within it. Bay Sea was the smallest among them but the closest to the heartland. Its shore bordered Yinju, where many dragons resided. It was so near the capital that it showed the extraordinary favor bestowed upon its Dragon king. The central waters were calm and still as several small boats drifted upon the sea. On the foremost boat, a man crouched at the bow, his eyes glinting green as he peered ahead. After watching for a while, he turned back into the cabin and spoke softly. "Young master, the Changliu Strait lies ahead." Inside, a young man reclined lazily against the boat's side. His golden eyes gleamed faintly in the cabin's dim light. Upon hearing the man, he merely replied, "Slow the boat, follow the coast westward and look for a settlement. There's no need to go directly into the strait." The green-eyed man quickly rose, leapt to the bow, and drew a pair of sticky dark green hands from his robe, slowly steering the boat forward. Chapter 1253, Bay Sea II. This young master was, of course, Li Xiaowei. Years ago, Li Xiaowei had ambushed and slain Situ Mo, seizing his Dharma artifact in the process. Pursued as far as the Wanyu territory, he killed Yunenzi of Chengxiao Gate in front of many cultivators and fled into the Sword Gate's domain. The Sword Gate had sent one of its direct disciples, Cheng Zhuhua, to receive him and invite him to rest in the prefecture. There was no decree from the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, no important figure appeared, and he was not invited up the mountain. From that alone, Li Xiaowei understood that the Sword Gate wished to avoid involvement, showing courtesy only for formality's sake. Though Cheng Zhuhua was clearly shaken and treated him politely, the courtyard in the prefecture did not even offer him a cup of tea. So Li Xiaowei hastily tidied up, used a golden Dao talisman, and slipped away into the eastern sea. It was common knowledge that Chengxiao Gate and Hangzhou Dao Gate were at odds, so heading there was impossible. The Qingzhou and Suzhou reefs lay close together, and Li Xiaowei feared ambush midway. Moreover, his own side had never declared allegiance to Hangzhou Dao Gate. Thus, he did the opposite, traveling all the way toward the Unison Sea. After journeying day and night, he reached Bay Sea, where he found a secluded place to offer distant homage to Li Chenghui. Then he entered seclusion to heal and refine his cultivation. He had only recently emerged after having made progress. Originally at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he had just broken through when he fought his way out of the combined assault of Chengxiao cultivators and spirit artifacts, which had greatly unsettled his foundation. After taking a pill to steady his cultivation, he estimated that his cultivation would stabilize completely within half a year to a year, allowing him to begin training secret techniques. Only now did he have time to sit quietly, and a faint sigh escaped him. I had thought that with Wang Fu dead and Cheng Xiao's hostility toward the heaven-mandated sun already deep, they would still act within bounds when playing the long game against my family. I never imagined that the old dog would strike with such ruthless decisiveness. Of all the Li family, only he and Li Ziming truly understood the power struggle within the Purple Mansion realm cultivators. What appeared to be profound Peak Gate's doing was in truth Cheng Xiao's long-planned scheme. No one had realized how resolute Cheng Xiao's intent was. The Purple Mansion realm formation at the lake could not have been arranged overnight. Li Ziming was bound to expose his whereabouts in the Eastern Sea. Even without profound Peak Gate's hand, there would have been other means. Now as his mind calmed, the threads came together. Cheng Xiao's plot did not begin at the moment the Taoist master broke through. From the very start, Yehui and Cheng Xiao were already simmering the frog in warm water. They were planning to kill me while keeping up appearances. But when the Taoist master suddenly advanced, Yehui tried to withdraw, forcing Cheng Xiao to alter their plans and strike Fi RSD at him instead. With no news of Cheng Xie or Li Ziming, Li Xiaowei had no intention of leaving Beici. Moreover, he had chosen this place with great care. The Dragon King of Beici was none other than the son of Dongfeng Yu. He was highly favored, formidable, and most importantly, the holder of the White Dragon succession. He was also the father of the White Flood Dragon of Clear Sea and Still Pond, Ding Jiao. In the past, Li Xiaowei had acted at Ding Jiao's request, helping to bring about the affair between the fox and the dragon. The White Dragon succession's moves had never been without purpose. Setting aside sentiment and reputation, there were still things upon him that the White Dragon succession coveted. Thus, this place was the safest refuge he could find. If I were to go south, Hangzhou Dao Gate might exploit my enmity with Chengxiao Gate for their own ends. It would be uncertain whose hands I'd end up in. Chengxiao's methods are insidious, while Hangzhou's authority pales before the might of the dragon clans. Meanwhile, Hangzhou is at odds with both Golden Feather and Azure Pond sects, each with their own factions. Taoist Master Yunxiu once mentioned during his visit that it is not a place to approach lightly. On the other hand, the Dragon Clan likely became aware of my presence the moment I entered Beici. Who knows, perhaps I might even gain an audience. So he captured a few demonic creatures to act as his attendants, and began silently calculating in his mind. I killed Sidu Mo and seized his Dharma artifact. That man had quite a fortune. It's a pity that Yunenzi's belongings are too risky to touch as someone might trace them. Otherwise, combined, it would have been a great windfall. But since Sidu Mo had served the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, there was no telling if his possessions were safe. It would be fine so long as they remained sealed in the storage pouch. Taking them out, however, was another matter. Moreover, his immortal foundation was exceptionally potent in suppressing and seizing Dharma artifacts. He had taken several from Chengxiao Gate, but those were not safe for personal use. Upon inspection through the immortal mirror, he found that one mansion water gourd still bore remnants of a tracking formation carved into its inner wall. It was a true hot potato. He dared not take it out, but planned to sort everything and trade them away while in Beici. He then summoned one of his demonic attendants. The demonic creatures of Beici were more learned than those of the southern border, but also more cunning. Yet once they had eaten human flesh, their nature was all alike. They would yield to power, not to kindness, and fear might but not virtue. So he made the creature kneel before him and asked, "What sort of place is this Changliu Strait? Are there any markets there that trade in spirit items?" The demonic creature seemed to be of a fish species, slimy and dripping water, as it quickly replied, "Great King, at Changliu Strait lies Changliu Mountain. There's a market at its foot, and atop the mountain lives a Purple Mansion realm Taoist master called Taoist Master Xiangchun. She's known for her good nature, treating both demons and immortals equally, and is a close friend of the Beici Dragon King. We demons of Beici rarely have a proper market to trade in." "Is that so?" Understanding dawned in Li Xiaowei's heart, and he nodded. "No wonder you creatures seem more cultured, and even half-trained in human form, so there's a marketplace where you can learn by imitation." These Qi cultivation realm demonic creatures could not truly take human form. They merely practiced certain techniques suited for demonic creature soldiers and minions, making themselves half-human and half-creature. Those of purer bloodlines prided themselves and refused such methods. Li Xiaowei merely said, "Then head for the market." A few demonic creatures began to row the boat. Li Xiaowei had already formed an estimate in his heart. Taoist Master Xiangchun. Her mountain gate lies here in Beici, bordering Yinzhou. She is familiar with the Dragon King. Her allegiances need no guessing. The Taoist master once mentioned her as a well-known kind soul, so this Changliu Mountain is right here. Perhaps I can use this chance to gather information. He sat cross-legged on the boat, eyes closed in meditation. After some time, a commotion rose outside. His spiritual sense immediately extended outward. Several blue-robed demons stood before the vessel, and the nervous voice of the toad demon at the bow could be heard. "My lords, please wait a moment. There's also a great king aboard this vessel. I dare not offend either side. If this one grows angry, even you may not withstand it. I beg your caution." The blue-robed demon had 2 long ribbons tied around its neck, a high nose and bulging eyes. It had a face full of confidence, though its tone remained courteous as it be. Odin said, "Fellow Taoist misunderstands. Please announce us. We come by our master's order, requesting an audience with the great king." The timid demon had already mustered all its courage just to say that much. Without thinking further, it trembled as it came to report, the blue-robed demon following behind. Li Xiaowei, fully aware of the situation, lifted the curtain of the cabin. His golden pupils fixed upon them, making the opposing demon flinch slightly. Li Xiaowei asked casually, "Who is your master?" The blue-robed demon bowed deeply and answered respectfully, "Great King, my master is the vast sea dragon king of serene source and dividing waters, who holds dominion here in Beici. He is currently resting at Changliu Mountain and wishes to invite the great king to meet with him." Chapter 1254, The Secret of the Great Ancestor, I. So it is the Dragon King of Bay Sea. He could have just summoned me. Why go to the trouble of sending an invitation? The blue-clad demon soldier cautiously lifted his eyes to find a valiant man in soft armor within the cabin. His manner was polite enough as he simply said, "Lead the way." These blue-clad demonic creatures were all at the late Foundation establishment realm. Using his perception technique art, Li Xiaowei saw that they resembled a kind of deep-sea blue prawn. They must surely belong to the Dragon Clan, to possess such standing in the Bay Sea. Li Xiaowei had some acquaintance with Ding Jiao, and this Dragon King could be regarded as a senior. Then a host of sea demons lifted a high-backed throne, adorned with exquisite jewels that was as vast as a house. Beneath it were 9 black-shelled profound turtles, and on each armrest rested a white hooked serpent's head, smooth and lustrous, traced with blue rune patterns that gave off a fierce air. The Dragon Clan had long used hooked serpent nobles for ornamentation, especially on guest seats, where serpent heads served as armrests. Black or gray serpents were disdained, only white ones would do. When Li Xiaowei settled into the seat, his entire body was smaller than one of those heads. The host of demonic creatures swayed as they carried him forward. Li Xiaowei had assumed some official of the Dragon Clan had discovered his presence, never expecting the Dragon King of Bay Sea himself to summon him. It appeared a great honor, yet in truth was something of a headache. Is this really necessary? 9 times out of 10, such unprovoked goodwill hides an ulterior motive, especially from a demonic creature of the Dragon Clan's rank. The dragons and the White Kiln share old ties, and Ding Jiao has said that the Dragon King of Bay Sea has even met Emperor Wei Gong himself. If those connections are truly reliable, the entire Eastern Sea would not be devoid of even a single White Kiln. He sat cross-legged as he sank into thought. The conveyance beneath him seemed slow yet was astonishingly swift, covering several hundred kilometers as the currents rushed by. The toad crouched below the seat gave a sycophantic croak. "Great King, we've reached Changliu Mountain." Changliu Mountain. Li Xiaowei instantly sensed something amiss. If the Dragon King of Bay Sea invited me, why not to his palace in Bay Sea? What business can he have summoning me to Changliu Mountain instead? He frowned. The blue-clad demonic creature beside him was quick-witted. As soon as the toad called out, it immediately added in a gentle tone, "Indeed, that is Changliu Mountain ahead. My lord has rarely left seclusion and is now upon the mountain conversing on the Tao with a Taoist master. Upon learning that you were in the Bay Sea, he bade me invite you for an audience." It seems this so-called Taoist master of Changliu Mountain is indeed a close confidant of the Dragon Clan. Li Xiaowei nodded thoughtfully. The conveyance halted at the mountain's foot, where a 16 or 17 years old Taoist nun with rosy cheeks stood waiting. The moment she saw him, she bowed and said, "Greetings, great king. The 2 honored ones are already waiting atop the mountain." A faint tremor stirred Li Xiaowei's heart, and his expression shifted slightly as he studied the immortal mountain anew. There was no one else in sight, only this Taoist nun. The 2 blue-clad shrimp demons followed him ashore. The Taoist nun bowed repeatedly, while the demonic creatures merely inclined their heads. Li Xiaowei remained silent. Changliu Mountain also claims a purple mansion realm Tao lineage, yet lowers itself to such servitude. The Unison Sea truly is no more than the Dragon Clan's backyard. As he ascended the mountain, he saw no cultivators passing by, nor any medicine gardens or pavilions. The spirit trees on either side grew so densely they blocked all view, deepening the strangeness in his heart. When they reached the summit, the 2 blue-clad demonic creatures moved ahead to lead the way. At last, a vast, luxurious palace came into sight. They passed through 3 successive gates, each guarded by demonic creatures. The pillars on both sides grew ever taller, painted with wave patterns of converging water. "Your Majesty, the White Kiln has been brought forth." The 2 demonic creatures spoke in unison, their voices echoing through the vast hall. Then a sweet, coquettish laughter, soft, high-pitched, and whispering, came from ahead. Li Xiaowei saluted, raising his brows slightly. Upon the highest seat sat a broad-shouldered, gray-haired man. His brow was high, his eyes narrow, and his hair unbound. His eyes were unnaturally large, glinting red in the dim palace light. He looked like a demon looming within murky mist. He wore a suit of silvery soft armor, with long gray-white hair spilling through the gaps between plates and drifting down his body. His hands were as large as human heads, the nails gleaming coldly where they pressed upon the armrests. The demonic creature sat with legs spread wide, his thighs as broad as a table. Upon his left knee perched a woman with long black hair and a pure face, draped only in a half-white gauze robe. Her snow-pale thighs and much of her upper body were bare, while her eyes were dim and unfathomable in hue. Dozens of Taoist nuns of differing charms and graceful bearing sat all around the vast palace hall, some holding trays of fruit, others lifting golden ewers as they chatted and laughed coyly, each displaying her own allure. The pink-cheeked nun who had greeted him below the mountain went up as well, smiling as she greeted her companions. Joining her sisters, she began gently rubbing the Dragon King's foot. Li Xiaowei lowered his gaze slightly, choosing not to look. His suspicions were abruptly confirmed. So it truly is as I thought. The one upon the throne was undoubtedly the Dragon King of Beici. The cultivator who had greeted him earlier had said that 2 honored ones are waiting on the mountain. If the entire Changliu mountain was steeped in such debauchery, who else could that Taoist nun on his knee be? It could only be the Purple Mansion Realm Taoist master of Changliu Mountain, Taoist Nun Xiangchun. No wonder Changliu Mountain enjoys such favor. No wonder Taoist Nun Xiangchun treats both humans and demons alike. The demons of Beici dare only whisper that the Taoist master and the Dragon King are on good terms. That phrase hardly begins to cover it. I've heard Taoist Nun Xiangchun is at the mid-stage of the Purple Mansion realm. She's not very old and has only broken through within the past century. The Dragon King of Beici is old enough to be her patriarchal ancestor. Several of his dragon sons are likely older than Taoist Master Xiangchun herself. She can hardly be a proper consort, but the nature of dragons is lustful, and none would dare spread such talk further. It was in truth an awkward situation. The Dragon King of Beici clearly had no qualms about letting word of their relationship spread. That was why he sat there so brazenly. Taoist Nun Xiangchun's thoughts, however, were far harder to guess. Li Xiaowei could not fathom it. Having finished his salute, he could only speak vaguely, greetings to the 2 honored ones. The gray-haired man spoke, his voice matching his fierce appearance. It was rough, deep, and tinged with something sinister. White Kilin, I have heard of you from Jiaor. Now that I have emerged from seclusion and happened to find you in the Beici, I thought it fitting to meet you in person. He released his grip, allowing Xiangchun to step down from his knee. The group of female cultivators dispersed with a sweep of his sleeve. A gray-black Taoist robe shimmered into being as Xiangchun's feet touched the ground, wrapping her modestly. She took a seat at the side. Only then did the Dragon King of Beici speak. This is Taoist Master Xiangchun, the mistress of Changliu Mountain. When he finished, Taoist Master Xiangchun spoke softly. Li Yun, so this is the White Kilin. I have read much about them, but this is my first time seeing one. Li Xiaowei could not tell what these 2 were plotting. He could only maintain full courtesy and return the salute. Dongfeng Lian's standing was clearly far above Ding Jiao's. He did not offer a seat, but instead spoke with amused interest. When I was young, I met Wei Emperor Gong. You are of the true Golden Core lineage and the rightful heir of the Celestial Dynasty, purer even than he was. Yet your temperament is not much like that of a White Kilin. Perhaps that is why your dynasty's fortune wanes and your bright Yang fruition attainment remains unstable. Xiangchun nodded and spoke gently. That was during the time of Wei's state. Now, he is a White Kilin rarely seen in this world. The gray-haired man blinked slowly, and his crimson eyes finally landed on Li Xiaowei. Dongfeng Liyan smiled and said, I summoned you here for Xiangchun's sake. Li Xiao. I lifted his head as the Dragon King said evenly, bright yang and veiled yin stem from the nature of valley water. Xiangchun requires White Kilin blood to cultivate her divine ability. A chill ran down Li Xiaowei's spine, but he quickly steadied himself and answered without changing expression, to be of assistance to the Taoist master is this junior's good fortune. Dongfeng Liyan laughed heartily, nodding slightly toward Xiangchun and saying in a gentle tone, I shall take him now. Once the required term is completed and a measure of White Kilin blood refined, I will send it to you. He rose from the throne, casting a vast shadow across the hall. Without sparing another glance for anyone, he waved his sleeve, and azure seawater gathered beneath his feet, carrying him swiftly through the great void. The great hall emptied in an instant. Taoist Master Xiangchun remained where she stood, coldly gazing into the emptiness. After a long while, a faint smile curved her lips. White Kilin blood, it's mine at last. Chapter 1255, The Secret of the Great Ancestor, II. Light blossomed before Li Xiaowei's eyes amid a vast expanse of shimmering blue, revealing a vision of crystalline brilliance. A palace of pure crystal gradually took form, and jade-like steps unfolded one after another before him. He exhaled softly as he saw a jade platform not far ahead of him. A chill lingered at his side. The Dragon King of Beici, Dongfeng Liyan, more demon than man in form, was straddling the steps beside him. His frame was immense, legs spanning 5 or 6 steps as he held a jade flask. His scarlet pupils were fixed unblinkingly upon him. He rose to his feet and said quietly, I called you here for a few matters. Of all the realms under heaven, only above the surface of the Unison Sea can such things be spoken. Today happens to be the right time to discuss them. Dongfeng Lian's tone had lost its earlier sinister edge. It was now deep and commanding. Li Xiaowei immediately straightened and replied, "Great king, please speak." Dongfeng Lian walked to the great gate of the Crystal Palace, his back turned, his voice somber. "Are you familiar with Li Qianyuan, the great ancestor of Wei?" Li Xiaowei sensed something ominous from the weight in that voice. A faint dread crawled up within him as he answered, "The founding emperor of Wei State, of course I am aware of him." Dongfeng Lian spoke quietly. In the Zhou dynasty, when the realm was divided among vassal states, wars never ceased. At last, the true monarch fell and Jin State severed the imperial lineage. The chaos was unending from then on. Each time an emperor died, his dynasty perished with him. Within 100 years, 6 rulers had come and gone. Then the great ancestor rose from beyond the passes. He conquered Qi and Lu, united the north, and became the first emperor to attain Bright Yang, the first human master of the Bright Yang fruition attainment. Later he established the Celestial Dynasty, where the imperial throne itself became a fruition attainment. The emperor borrowed the rank of a golden core, and his officials borrowed the power of Bright Yang. The Wei court was ruthless within its harem, yet it was a true celestial realm. Among Wei, Qi, Liang, and Zhao, only Emperor Wu of Liang mastered his methods. Wei and Liang alone held that capacity. The others had the name of a celestial dynasty, but not its substance. As for the likes of Zhao and Yan, they are laughable, mere puppets of the Buddhist cultivators, yet they still dare call themselves emperors. He never turned to look at Li Xiaowei, speaking instead to the empty air. Everyone believed that the dynasty he built had at last solved the rift between mortals and immortals, establishing the perfect model for an immortal state. Yet such a figure, one but half a step from the Tao embryo, suddenly died without warning. His Bright Yang fruition attainment returned to the Great Void. Wei Emperor Gong perished as a result, collapsing before his court, his body bursting into ruined flesh. The imperial prestige that Wei had forged through generations became a horror and a jest. Even the soldiers lost their bestowed powers, and the entire nation fell into ruin. Method of founding an immortal state was later stolen by Great Supreme Chan. They studied it, refined it generation by generation, and thus arose today's 7 Dharma forms of the northern Buddhist lands. In truth, their relentless persecution of the Wei's Li lineage was not merely karmic vengeance. It was as when a thief steals from another's house and then shouts the loudest to condemn his victim, desperate to kill him so the stolen thing may truly become his own. Li Xiaowei's hair stood on end. Dongfeng Lian finally turned, revealing an expression dark with both grief and gloom. It was Luoxia. You have met Li Zengquan as well. Luoxia's ambition to claim the Bright Yang position is no secret. Yi. The great ancestor's influence upon the Bright Yang fruition attainment ran too deep. He imbued it with meaning beyond measure, and even heaven and earth themselves acknowledge him alone as its rightful master. But he lost his mind and has fallen, again and again, from the Great Void. With each fall, Luoxia exerts her influence, wearing down his divine ability and destiny, and of course, tormenting Li Zengquan in the process. The last time, your family should remember, it was Chu Yi. Li Xiaowei's head jerked up as Dongfeng Lian continued. For 1,000 years, the Bright Yang Dao has grown deeply defiled. Luoxia has gradually seized the upper hand, opening grotto heavens and releasing vast numbers of Bright Yang techniques into the world. Ordinarily, the cultivation of Bright Yang by mortals would have strengthened the great ancestor, but he has been tainted too greatly. Those cultivators striving toward the Purple Mansion realm and the Golden Core realm stir the balance of heaven and earth, which instead helps to erode the fruition attainment itself. And you are the watershed. Dongfeng Lian's expression grew complicated, bearing a trace of cruel malice. Bright Yang fruition attainment has finally deigned to bestow its fate upon another. With this destiny upon you, your chance of breaching the Purple Mansion realm is immense, and perhaps gives a chance of reaching the fruition attainment itself. You need not even succeed. Merely making the attempt would cause him immeasurable harm. Though we lack the power to rescue the great ancestor, by what small strength we possess, my dragon bloodline ought to slay you. Yet you are of the Wei's Li lineage, a junior of Wei Emperor Gong. From that view, we ought instead to aid you. You must understand how conflicted my dragon clan feels toward you. Perhaps ignoring you altogether is the best we can do. His tone darkened, growing sharp and venomous. My lineage is closer to Wei Emperor Gong's. Earlier, I sent Ding Jiao to assist you, revealing pieces of the Wei's Li matter while guarding against Mount Luoxia's notice. But things shifted. You, a white Qilin, drew Chengxiao's greed for your fate. He pursued Li Ziming to the eastern sea, wearing that dog's grin as he probed, while Luoxia watched from the shadows. One of my dragon clan's spirit cultivators had old ties with your Li family and was compelled to intervene. She is closely bound to the dragon monarch. Thus, the moment she acted, high cultivators could deduce how far the dragon monarch's hidden matters had progressed. In the end, the whole affair twisted into a trap. Luoxia's scheme to probe my dragon bloodline. They uncovered the dragon monarch's condition. Whether this was Chengxiao's design or not, Luoxia's people have already gained the upper hand. This move placed us utterly on the defensive, and that was when I sensed something was wrong. Li Xiaowei's expression changed at once, realizing the Dragon King's gaze had grown dark and oppressive. Dongfeng Lian's voice dropped, turning cold. This makes me recall another possibility. Mount Luoxia lies dangerously close to Bright Yang, so how could they not know of this threat of fate upon you? Why have they not come to claim you? Would it not serve them better to keep it in hand? Perhaps this fate was lured out deliberately, cast upon the Wei's Li descendants to ensnare us, to make my kind hesitate. You and the entire Li line may well be the trap Luoxia set for us. The Dragon King's pupils narrowed thinner and thinner, until they were two vertical crimson slits as he said, "You are the handiwork of Mount Luoxia." Chapter 1256, White Blood Sap, I. Li Xiaowei faced the red-eyed Dragon King, a purple mansion realm peak cultivator with all 5 divine abilities. Dongfeng Lian's murderous intent seemed ready to overflow. The entire crystal palace trembled slightly from his emotional transformation, emitting a low humming sound. Li Xiaowei's mind flashed through everything in an instant. He spoke urgently and at length, one layer of deduction and calculation after another. Since the great king believes that my Bright Yang fruition attainment was granted through Luoxia's influence, and that the great ancestor has weakened to this extent, would there not be a second grant even if I were to die suddenly? If Luoxia were to place that second grant within Mount Luoxia, killing me would only be drinking poison to quench thirst. Furthermore, had I remained ignorant, that would be one thing. But now that you have revealed these secrets to me, do you truly think I would dare scheme for fruition attainment? Failure means death, and if I succeed, would Luoxia really watch idly as the Bright Yang fruition attainment, the fruit of over 1,000 years of plotting, falls into the hands of Li Qianyun's descendant? Bright Yang values lineage and hierarchy above all. If I were to become a true monarch, how could that fruition attainment ever align with Luoxia's wishes? Before Dongfeng Lian could reply, Li Xiaowei calmly continued, "This junior knows nothing of fate and destiny. Yet as a white Qilin, even if I were indeed born under Luoxia Mountain's influence, working with the Dragon Clan to preserve the great ancestor's seat is the proper course. No matter how powerful Mount Luoxia may be, it will never tolerate my existence. If the great king wishes to kill me, there is no need for so many words, simply make the reasoning clear." For the Dragon Clan, the worst outcome would be his failure to attain fruition attainment, meaning all their efforts would amount to nothing. Conversely, Mount Luoxia most desired Li Xiaowei to make that attempt and fail. Dongfeng Lian's expression darkened, his deep voice resonating through the hall. Can a white Qilin truly accept the severance of one's path? Is the ending of lifespan not still death? If you possess ambition, why not clash with Luoxia over Bright Yang itself? Negotiate with them if you must. Should you ascend as a true monarch, your divine abilities would be wondrous indeed. Would reconciliation then be impossible? Even if you fall, countless chances for rebirth exist. It is still better than dying within the Purple Mansion realm. Li Xiaowei did not avert his gaze as he replied, "If I attain true monarch and fall, Luoxia will suppress me forever with no hope of release. Yet as a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, I still have margin to bargain for reprieve. Failing that, as long as the Dragon Clan exchanges a portion of metallic essence for me, I could reincarnate and escape this cage. Would that not be liberation?" Though Li Xiaowei spoke of so great a matter as exchanging a portion of metallic essence, Dongfeng Lian showed no surprise. Standing before the hall, the demonic creature made no mention of reprieve as his voice softened. "Reincarnate and walk another path if you wish, but you may never again reach the realm of 5 divine abilities." Li Xiaowei fell silent for a moment. The demonic creature took a step forward. Much of the ferocity had faded from his eyes as he spoke once more. "Whether or not you are the handiwork of Mount Luoxia, I have no reason to kill you. I only wish to make matters clear. Though once you break through to the Purple Mansion realm, Mount Luoxia will surely come for you again. The true ownership of the Bright Yang fruition attainment is not something you alone can decide. When you reach the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm, the great ancestor's condition will remain uncertain. Whether you seek reprieve or extension, or even, with no retreat left, choose reincarnation and start anew, everything must adapt to the situation as it unfolds." Li Xiaowei silently let out a breath of relief, bowed, and said, "The great ancestor was harmed by Luoxia. The Dragon Clan and we have been friends for 1,000 years. I can still tell the difference between right and wrong." Dragon King of Bay Sea did not answer him. Instead, he ascended to the highest jade platform step by step. His body was immense, casting layer upon layer of shadow. Standing at the edge, he raised his head and said softly, "I must also take this white Qilin blood. First, for my own use. Second, as an excuse to deal with Xiangchun. But rest assured, you will not suffer for it. I will have someone bring you a spirit item in return." Li Xiaowei lifted his head. He had long known he could not avoid this encounter, yet a lingering suspicion remained unconfirmed. Now, sensing an opening while the Dragon King was still approachable, he asked, "There is something I do not know if I may ask." among the Dragon clan, which one was it who shares close ties with our Wei's Li lineage and intervened to save me? Dongfeng Lian glanced at him and replied, "This matter is a long one. It is closely related to Taoist Master Zaipai of old. It would be improper for me to speak more here. If you truly wish to know, go eastward. Beyond the reef sea lies an ocean to the north, called Lai Sea. You may inquire there." The Dragon King's expression darkened slightly as he continued. That wretch Chengxia was sharp enough, and he sensed quite a lot. Whether intentional or not, he knew well he'd become a pawn of Mount Luoxia. Now he hides away and refuses to emerge. Who knows who he's conspiring with in secret? Li Xiaowei understood as much he could from those words and bowed as he said, "Many thanks to the Dragon clan for lending their aid." Dongfeng Lian waved his hand slightly. Clouds and winds surged within the crystal palace as sheets of white mist poured in from outside like a tide, climbing swiftly up the emerald jade steps until they reached their calves. Dongfeng Lian and Li Xiaowei stood together within the white clouds, as if at the very summit of the heavens. All the crystal and jade scenery was veiled, leaving only boundless whiteness and, not far away, a solitary jade platform. Soon the clouds gathered and a young man condensed beside them. He was dressed in spotless white, with neatly combed hair, a slightly round face, short fine brows, and pure black eyes. He bowed with graceful formality and said, "Dongfeng Heian greets your excellency." The Dragon King shifted his crimson eyes slightly and said, "I have told you several times, there's no need for such formality. You too have attained freedom in divine ability now. If you keep being so courteous, it will be I who feels uneasy." Dongfeng Heian smiled faintly, yet did not straighten his bowed back, replying, "Proper courtesy must always be observed. This was something we learned from the human race in ancient times, and I have benefited from it to this day. I cannot, merely because I've gained power and learned a few divine abilities, cast it aside so lightly." The demonic creature treated him courteously and said nothing further, only nodding. Dongfeng Heian then turned his gaze toward Li Xiaowei, nodded slightly, and said with a smile, "So it is the White Kiln here. It has been a long time indeed. I had thought several times to visit Taoist friend Zijai, but he has always been at the 10,000-mile stone pond, and I have found it difficult to meet him." In truth, the Dragon clan had no reason to fear the Azure Pond sect. There were few places in the eastern or southern seas where dragons could not go. At most, one might encounter Sea Boxiu at the stone pond, and to be blunt, Dongfeng Heian hardly needed to show Yunxiu any courtesy. But when Dongfeng Heian said it was difficult to meet him, it was unclear whether he spoke politely or was hindered from entering the stone pond by something else. Li Xiaowei bowed and offered a courteous reply. "My elders have spoken highly of your grace and demeanor, while greatly admiring you. Should you ever wish to meet, simply give the word, and we will come to pay our respects wherever you desire." Dongfeng Heian smiled faintly and nodded politely. The Bay Sea Dragon King sat high upon the platform and gestured subtly. At once, the white-robed youth drew a dark golden box from his sleeve, upon which a Qilin with bared fangs was etched in dim relief. Dongfeng Heian gently stroked the box, murmuring what seemed to be an incantation. The dark golden box sprang open on its own. Inside, wrapped in folded black silk, lay a small circular porcelain dish, the size of a pastry, filled with white gold liquid. The moment the white gold-colored spirit item manifested in this world, it was as if a golden white sun rose amidst the clouds. Its brilliance shimmered, and rays like 10,000 dawns pierced through the mist, flooding the entire white realm with dazzling light. Dongfeng Heian extended his hand, and fierce winds gathered the clouds, drawing the sunlight back into the box. Only then did the surroundings return to normal. Smiling, he said, "This item, I imagine, is not unfamiliar to you. It is called white blood sap, known in ancient times as the Shiang Shengeming Qilin Light. The beast of bright yang is the Shiang, whose eldest son is Shengeming, the very first white Qilin. During a solar eclipse, the radiance that falls from a white Qilin becomes what we call white blood sap." Chapter 1257, White Blood Sap, II. Li family was indeed no stranger to the name White Blood Sap. Years ago, Li Ziming, when preparing to break through to the Purple Mansion realm, had listed it among the bright yang spirit items needed for that stage. No wonder its trace had never been found, for how could white blood sap still exist when white Qilins themselves were extinct? Those spirit items could be refined by more than one method. This one clearly had deep ties to the white Qilin. Li Xiaowei, however, had something more pressing on his mind. Taking the chance, he looked up and asked, "You all call me White Qilin. May I ask, how does that differ from Shengeming?" Dongfeng Heian let out a soft laugh and replied, "You possess the fate of a white Qilin, so full and abundant that it seems as though you are its reincarnation. What you lack is the white Qilin's nature. By cultivating the purple gold devil Dao, you complete that nature. Once you break through the golden core realm, you'll be no different from the Shengeming Qilin. When the next solar eclipse comes, that same Shiang Shengeming Qilin light will fall upon your body. It is because your fate as a white Qilin is already so complete that the fate divine ability within the purple gold devil Dao comes naturally to you. Were you to enter the Buddhist Dao, you would instantly gain your station just as the ancient undefeated king of brightness once did. It was rare to hear such revelations, and Li Xiaowei quickly asked, is the fate divine ability itself considered fate? Dongfeng Heian, patient and composed, replied, the fate divine ability is still a divine ability. Fate aids in cultivating it, but the ability itself cannot create fate. Once you ascend to fruition attainment, the purple gold devil Dao naturally grants its cultivators such divine abilities. Metallic essence is not the key, the seed itself is. Only in ancient times were there great divine ability cultivators, immortal lord, level beings who could generate fate through metallic essence alone. How keen was Li Xiaowei's perception? He immediately grasped the meaning, so the true key lies in pursuing fruition attainment. To seek fate through nature, perhaps it truly means to seek fruition attainment through nature, and from fruition attainment, attain fate itself, completing both in one stroke. Since the Bei Sea Dragon King was still waiting, Li Xiaowei spoke no more, and Dongfeng Heian continued, it is always best to be prepared. Taking this portion of white Qilin blood from you is not only for Lady Xiangchun's use, His Excellency also wishes to examine it. After all, it is mainly to observe your bloodline, not to use it as a spirit item. Acting before you reach the Purple Mansion realm may harm your foundation, but waiting until after that stage would make it extremely difficult to remedy. Dongfeng Heian had been unfailingly courteous to him, even taking the trouble to explain. At last, Li Xiaowei understood, so that's how it is. How cautious they are. Even at this point, they still wish to verify my bloodline. Lady Xiangchun's need for a spirit item is merely an excuse. The Dragon Clan, acting as intermediaries, draw my blood to confirm that I am indeed the Wei's Li White Qilin, then hand the remainder to Xiangchun as a token. The real purpose lies in this inspection. Dongfeng Heian then took up the pastry-sized porcelain dish and said, you need only refine this white blood sap. When I extract your blood essence from the outside, it will not harm your foundation. It will even strengthen and solidify your cultivation. The young man was ever polite, even adding a light jest. Of course, I cannot let you use all of this. A mere touch between the center of your brows will be more than enough. If you were to attempt this after forming your Purple Mansion realm, an entire portion would be required. Apparently reluctant to touch the spirit item himself, he extended it forward. Li Xiaowei raised his forefinger and lightly touched the center of his brows. His fingertip burned with searing heat. No liquid remained upon his hand, but a surge of radiant brilliance rose from his brow. He then sat cross-legged upon the jade platform. At his side, Dongfeng Heian formed a seal with one hand, studying intently, while tiny drops of golden liquid began to gather at the tip of his other hand. All the while, the Bei Sea Dragon King watched quietly from above. As time passed, Dongfeng Heian finally withdrew his hand, revealing a golden droplet the size of a fingernail within his palm. Li Xiaowei's eyes remained tightly shut, but his face had paled. The heavenly light at his brow covered his entire body, swiftly replenishing his vital qi. It was clear that the process would take some time. Dongfeng Heian raised his hand, and a sea of clouds surged up, wrapping him in protection and concealment. He then stepped quickly forward, offering the golden droplet with both hands, and said respectfully, please, Your Excellency, examine it. Seated upon the main throne, Dongfeng Lian received it gently, studying it in his palm for some time. At last, the red-eyed demon king murmured, though I have not examined it in detail. At the very least, it is unmistakably of Bright Yang's true line. He pondered in silence for a long moment before speaking again, his voice calm. Heian, I find his temperament lacking in dominance and ferocity. It's not quite like that of the White Qilin, yet neither does he bear the White Cicada's treacherous fickleness. If I must compare, he more closely resembles Wei Emperor Gong himself. Dongfeng Heian smiled slightly and bowed. In my humble opinion, this seems entirely natural. The Wei great ancestor's state was already unusual, and Bright Yang itself was affected. Signs of this appeared even during Wei Emperor Gong's reign. That he resembles Wei Emperor Gong now is only logical. The fact that he's not overly domineering or tyrannical is for the best. There's no need to fear he'll act rashly or charge headlong toward fruition attainment. That is indeed most ideal. Indeed, the Bei Sea Dragon King could not help but nod in agreement and said, no matter how the Bright Yang fruition attainment is affected, it shouldn't lead to multiple strands of fate descending. By my count, Mount Luoxia should soon be moving to summon Bright Yang's descent again. We must prepare to safeguard this side. As for the rest, how much can they truly manage? This one Li Xiaowei is the utmost they can attempt, and he remains safe under our watchful eyes. Dongfeng Heian nodded respectfully and reply. The surplus position of Bright Yang is exceedingly difficult to attain. The Dongli sect has done research into the intercalary position of radiant fire, yet even that is no simple task, not to mention cultivating a divine ability under Mount Luoxia's very nose. I wonder what the North will make of it. The demon creature seated above hesitated at the mention, then spoke in a low voice. It is still early, but he must be warned in advance to instill vigilance and wariness toward Luoxia, lest he grow complacent and find himself at a disadvantage later. He stored away the golden droplet in his hand, stood up and said, I will make a trip to Yinju. If he breaks through and emerges, explain everything clearly to him and see him safely sent off. Chapter 1258, Tea I. Chapter 1258, Tea I. When Li Xiaowei awoke from deep meditation, the mana within his body surged like great rivers. His aura was steady, his cultivation full and well-rounded, and his immortal foundation shone with a clear and pristine radiance. This ordeal truly did not cause too much harm with the aid of white blood sap. Still, it involved stirring the blood essence. Even after consuming such a spirit item, it merely balanced things on both sides and slightly stabilized my cultivation. This was also Dongfeng Heian's precise sense of parity. Bright Yang possessed the effect of prospering one's lineage, and although the dragon clan was generous, they valued dragon heirs above all else. As a result, they naturally became frugal when it came to Bright Yang's spirit items. Aho! He exhaled a breath of white vapor and opened his eyes. The clouds at his side still drifted and rose, as though he were standing within an endless sea of clouds. Not a trace of the Crystal Palace remained to be seen, and the Bay Sea Dragon King had already departed. Only the white-robed youth stood quietly at his side. He did not know how long his cultivation had lasted. Dongfeng Heian's gaze seemed never to have left him. The moment he saw Li Xiaowei, the youth immediately smiled considerately and said, 128 days have passed. Under the Li Wei Orthodox calendar, with the Zai month of the Dipper establishment as the standard, it is now the flowing fire of the 7th month. If calculated according to the Liu Chu Orthodox calendar, used by Yue State, then it is the 22nd day of the 6th month. Li Xiaowei already knew that Yue State followed the Liu Chu Orthodox calendar, which differed from the Li family Wei dynasty system of dating. Yet Dongfeng Heian spoke as naturally as if he had lived in the Wei State and routinely converted dates as a matter of course. His heart could not help but tremble slightly. Just how many years has this one lived? The Beijia Dragon Monarch is a hornless dragon. If this man was formed from the first breath exhaled by the Beijia Dragon Monarch, would that not mean his lifespan is nearly the same as the Dragon Monarch's? Sighing inwardly, he first saluted and said, Many thanks to Senior for watching over me. So nearly 4 months has passed. Senior is truly learned and well-informed to even know the Wei calendar. Dongfeng Heian did not respond at first. Instead, he invited him to rise. The cloud chi of the entire palace swayed and gathered beneath their feet, and a speck of pitch black emerged. Only then did the youth speak. It is merely a habit. Fellow Taoist, please. Dongfeng Heian addressed everyone as fellow Taoist. He stepped into the great void, and Li Xiaowei immediately saw a deep and resplendent glow of converging water within. It was likely a grand formation of the Dragon Clan. Dongfeng Heian spoke at the same time he moved through the great void. The matter of the Lai Si originally stemmed from a favor owed to Taoist Master Zaipai. Back then, Anhui Heaven had to be opened during the conflict between North and South, releasing those portions of true essence in nature and revealing the state of the true essence fruition attainment as well. The one who occupied that fruition attainment is likely no longer present. This was extremely advantageous to our Dragon Clan, and Taoist Master Zaipai took the opportunity to strike a deal with us. As for what motive lay behind it, Dongfeng Heian shook his head with a half-smile and half-not smile, and finished, even now, it remains unknown. Li Xiaowei's heart sank slightly. Although the Li family was not entirely without ties to Purple Smoke Gate, their relationship was merely superficial, and he had no personal connection with Zaipai herself. After a brief moment of thought, he asked, Senior, are you sending me to? Oh, Dongfeng Heian smiled faintly in reply. We have just exited the Grotto Heaven, so naturally we are heading toward Bei Si. If you have a place to settle, I can go along the way and simply send you there. At present, there is no need to worry about Chengxiao, as long as you do not root. And into several of Chengxiao Gate's outer sea outposts, he will have no mind to trouble you. As for returning to the mainland, it is still somewhat unstable. Li Xiaowei understood his meaning. No matter what, the outer sea was the territory of the Dragon Clan, and no overt or covert attacks would be directed at him there. Once he reached the mainland, however, the Dragon Clan would have no ability to intervene. Although Chengxiao would not dare to kill him, the man's fate divine ability was formidable, and it was hard to avoid whatever methods he might employ. Dongfeng Heian nodded slightly and said, Only that Taoist master of your household will have to bear some hardship. Li Xiaowei replied, In that case, I ask Senior to drop me off at a nearby marketplace. I still have some Dharma artifacts to deal with. Otherwise, traveling upon the sea will ultimately be unsafe. Li Xiaowei most wanted to trade with the Dragon Clan, since they possessed first-rate treasures and did not fear holding items from Chengxiao Gate. Yet there had been no opportunity previously, and Dongfeng Heian likely lacked the authority to decide such matters. He asked deliberately, to see how he would respond. Easy enough, as expected. Dongfeng Heian did not say much. He raised his brows and glanced outward from the great void, then replied, "In Bay Sea there is a marketplace at Changliu Mountain. There is a place called Tai Island to the east. It is a small island used by the Azurpan sect for trade in the Unison Sea. To the west lies Xia Mountain. Although it has a marketplace, it can be skipped. To the south is the Scarlet Pristine Sea." Li Xiaowei nodded in understanding, feeling a slight sense of regret. He had originally intended to go east to take a look at the farthest edge of the Lai Sea. He said, "Then I shall trouble Senior to go to Tai Island." All right, Tai Island. That name was also changed not long ago. Dongfeng Heian spoke of it as a newly changed name, though no one knew when this newness had occurred. The youth merely nodded, and after traveling for a short while within the great void, the two broke through it and returned to the manifest world. Li Xiaowei felt light gather beneath his feet and rose upon the wind. The white-robed young man beside him had already vanished, leaving behind only a graceful voice. "After all, it is the site of an immortal sect, so it is not suitable for me to approach. This place is only 50 kilometers from Tai Island. You may fly there on your own." Li Xiaowei descended upon his light, performed a salute toward the sky, and let out a breath, feeling much more relaxed. "I have finally managed to get through this." Although the Dragon Clan bore little malice, there was a peak Purple Mansion Realm cultivator here and a Purple Mansion Realm demonic spirit there, each one holding immense authority and belonging to the Dragon Clan that the world looked up to. Remaining in the company of such demonic creatures was ultimately uncomfortable. I have also learned news of Chengxiao along the way, so there is no need to be overly wary of him. Everything will be more at ease. Although matters concerning Luoxia and the Dragon Clan were troublesome, they were not something that a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator like him needed to consider. Li Xiaowei had never troubled himself over such things. His mood immediately improved, and when he raised his eyes to look into the distance, he unexpectedly saw the seawater spread out in a purplish-red hue. The seawater here was actually purple-red, and faintly mixed with bluish-purple tones, with none of the deep blue color of the Unison Sea to be seen. The vast sea before him was, at least within his field of vision, interwoven with purple and blue hues. He immediately rode his light into the air, admiring it with a trace of curiosity. After flying only a dozen kilometers or so, he saw a rogue cultivator riding the wind and hovering above the sea surface. Li Xiaowei just so happened to need someone to ask for directions. He lightly raised his hand, and a beam of heavenly light leapt forth, appearing not far from that cultivator. Li Xiaowei's speed was never something an ordinary Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator could match, and he also possessed the light transformation traversal method of the Yuan soft armor. Naturally, the rogue cultivator could not react in time. When he saw a late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator appear nearby, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Upon noticing that the man's bearing and Dharma artifacts were far beyond those of ordinary people, he hurriedly performed a salute. This humble cultivator greets the Taoist. Chapter 1259, Tai II. Chapter 1259, Tai II. Li Xiaowei had no intention of making things difficult for him and merely asked, "Which direction is Tai Island in, and why is the seawater here purple-red?" The cultivator hurriedly replied, "Taoist, Tai Island lies more than 35 kilometers to the southeast. This is the slaughtered purple scattered reefs, one of the few areas around Tai Island where resources can be gathered. It originally produced spirit sand, but over the years it has been completely excavated by passing cultivators. Only cinnabar ore veins remain on the seabed, and the seawater also contains cinnabar. Seen from afar, it thus appears purple-red." He smiled ingratiatingly as he continued, "The name and the place both have their origins. Back then, Senior Lei, who was known as the Golden Bowstring, guarded this area. An extremely imposing water ape once came to attack. It was said to be a great demonic beast not far from the Purple Mansion realm, but it was shot dead here by that senior with 3 arrows, turning into 50 kilometers of cinnabar. Thus this stretch of small reefs came into being. It is said this demonic creature had some kind of whole something." Li Xiaowei raised his brows slightly as he listened, a hint of a smile appearing at the corner of his lips. He now found this person much more agreeable to look at. The two of them rode their light together and flew toward the southeast he indicated, as Li Xiaowei said, "So it has such an origin. You mean the whole pill, who named the slaughtered purple scattered reefs and who governs Tai Island now." This rogue cultivator was also skilled at currying favor. He immediately put on an enlightened expression and nodded repeatedly as he said, Yes, the whole pill. Your insight is truly broad. The slaughtered purple scattered reefs were not originally called that, but the slaughtered ape scattered reefs. It is just that the island master who guards this island has the surname Yuan, which did not sound very pleasant, so the color was changed to replace it. Li Xiaowei traveled extremely quickly on his light. They had only exchanged a few words when a yellow-brown island appeared in the distance. As they descended closer, the rogue cultivator said respectfully, "Please give your instructions, sir. This humble one is Zaihu Damo. I am somewhat familiar with this island. To be able to serve the Taoist is my good fortune." In the Eastern Sea, a Foundation establishment realm cultivator who was alone, without attendants, and yet appeared to hold noble status could be considered an opportunity. Thus, this rogue cultivator was eager to seize it. Li Xiaowei merely nodded and replied, "Take me to the place where Dharma artifacts are sold." Upon hearing that the cultivator stationed on the island bore the surname Yuan and belonged to the Azure Pond sect, it was certainly the Yuan family of the Mushroom Forest. Had it been several decades earlier, there would have been no need for anyone to guide him, and Li Xiaowei would have even gone to pay a visit. Now that the two sides had gone their separate ways, Li Xiaowei could not be bothered, and merely had this man lead the way. After no more than 2 streets, they reached a towering 4-story pavilion in the most luxurious area on the island. The moment Zaihu Damo stepped inside, attendants on either side came forward with unfriendly expressions. When Li Xiaowei stepped in after him, however, bright smiles appeared all around, and they addressed him as sir again and again. Li Xiaowei did not waste time. He went straight up to the highest level, where a man came forward to greet him. The blue-robed Foundation establishment realm cultivator, whose discernment far surpassed that of Zaihu Damo, spoke politely, "May I know from which lineage you come from?" Li Xiaowei settled himself and replied, "Top-grade Foundation establishment realm Dharma artifacts, obtained by killing a direct descendant. Take them if you can. My elders also cultivate in the Azure Pond sect. There is no need to be perfunctory with me." He raised his brows and glanced over. His golden eyes swept across the other's face twice. He suddenly felt it to be somewhat familiar and asked, "From where do you hail as a cultivator?" The man's expression had already changed. While quietly calling for someone to go summon others, he spoke with utmost respect. "This junior comes from Jiangbei. My surname is Zhou, and my name is Beiyun." When hearing the name Jiangbei and then Beiyun, Li Xiaowei immediately thought of a saber wielder. Comparing their features, he raised his brows and said, "Gongsun Beiyun, I have met your elder brother. His saber techniques were acceptable." Zhou Beiyun immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, Li Xiaowei had no interest in taking issue with him. He took several jade boxes from his sleeve, laid them out one by one and said, "2 golden spiked Dharma artifacts from Golden Tang Gate, both fairly decent items. A green gourd of mansion water, a top-tier piece among Foundation establishment realm artifacts, of a level that can be passed down through generation. Lastly, a wooden staff, ordinary in itself, but capable of nourishing the body and assisting with healing." He then took out an ordinary cloth storage pouch and set it on the table. The items inside are likewise of considerable value and are easier to handle. Zhou Beiyun saluted and said, "I wonder what senior requires." Ordinary people would naturally never trade such items for spirit stones. There was simply no need. Moreover, grade 1 Dharma artifacts were not something spirit stones could buy. However, for Li Xiaowei and even for the current Li family, most items that could not reach the Purple Mansion realm held little meaning, which made the matter difficult. Li Xiaowei thought for a moment and replied, "I need an excellent Dharma shield, a flying shuttle, or Dharma artifacts of similar grade." He paused, then finally asked the question he cared about most, "Are there resources or items here of the Purple Mansion realm?" This question left Zhou Beiyun at a loss. He was merely a guest cultivator on the island and had no such authority. His face filled with embarrassment. Fortunately, he was saved from answering by a burst of noise from the staircase, followed by loud laughter. "Which fellow Taoist might this be, coming to my Tay Island as a guest?" Zhou Beiyun felt as though he had been granted sudden amnesty. He hurriedly stepped aside and said respectfully, "Island Master." Li Xiaowei realized that the one surnamed Yuan had arrived, and his expression barely changed. He was not of an overbearing temperament, and ordinarily should have risen to show courtesy. Yet the relationship between the two sides was truly awkward now. It would not be an exaggeration to say there were lingering grievances. He could only lower his gaze and remain silent. An old man came up from below. He looked quite advanced in age, with a fairly kind face, a head full of white hair, and a cane in his hand. He felt somewhat displeased at the sight of the seated young man. If an ordinary cultivator dared to put on such airs, Yuan Hua would have already scolded them. However, the other party's cultivation was profound, and his age extremely young. Fearing that Li Xiaowei might be a Purple Mansion realm direct descendant of a great background, he did not dare let his expression grow too stern. Tay Island itself was small. Although it bore the name of the Azure Pond sect, it was still easy for others to look down upon it. Moreover, those of Purple Mansion Realm lineage all knew that the Azure Pond sect's Purple Mansion Realm was currently in a precarious state. When he saw the jade boxes laid out on the table, he formed a guess and spoke in a tone that was neither fully soft nor fully hard. I am Yuan Hua of the Yuan family of Mushroom Forest. I serve as the unworthy island master of Tay Island and the peak master of Lion Peak of the Azure Pond sect, stationed here at Tay by order of the Azure Pond sect. May I ask which distinguished figure fellow Taoist might be? There is no need to worry that our Azure Pond sect cannot afford the exchange. The slaughtered purple spiritual traces still remain, and the rosy glows of the celestial pavilion still command awe over the southern sea and the 5,000 kilometers of Stone Pond. With luck, it will not take long. Seeing that the other party did not recognize him, Li Xiaowei understood that this old man had likely been stationed here for many years. He had not personally experienced matters on the mainland, and rarely even went there. I cannot compare to Senior's illustrious reputation. He smiled and continued, this junior comes from a small lake on the mainland. My surname is Lei, and my given name is Xiaowei. The pavilion fell silent. Zhou Beiyan looked utterly confused, seemingly still trying to place the location of the small mainland lake. Yuan Hua's expression, however, froze in an instant. His pupils suddenly dilated, and his gaze belatedly fixed upon the young man's golden eyes. His mind roared loudly, turning completely blank. His hands and feet went cold, followed by a surge of complex and fearful dread. Li Xiaowei, the peerless genius of the Li family, the White Kilin of the Li family. The White Kilin Li Xiaowei who ambushed and killed Sidu Mo, the chief of Golden Tang Gate at the river. The man who fought 6 alone, and under the pressure of the spirit artifact Yangjing Profound Ring, forcefully slew the Purple Mansion Realm direct descendant and Peak Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator Yunenzi. How did this calamity star come here? Is he not afraid of Cheng Xiao? Chapter 1260, Deng Family I. For a brief instant, Yuan Hua stood frozen in place, at a complete loss for how to respond. At his side, Zhou Beiyan was still caught up in his own forceful words, secretly hesitating. This should have been a perfect chance to show himself before Yuan Hua, if Li Xiaowei had not exposed his identity earlier. And if he had not feared bringing trouble upon his elder brother, he would have spoken up long ago to support him. Now, he could only steal glances at Yuan Hua's face and saw the old man's beard trembling. Yuan Hua's voice cracked as he said, so it is you, sir. My apologies for the discourtesy. It was my own ridiculous words earlier, actually daring to speak of your elders. All the bluster drained from him at once, and he said awkwardly and in fear, this old fool was blind and failed to recognize you. Back when Lord Chunfeng was stationed on this island, I admired and revered him immensely. I often sought his guidance and have always been grateful in my heart. I never imagined you would come today. Failing to welcome you would already be bad enough, yet I even failed to recognize you in person. A grave offense, a grave offense. The speed of his change in attitude left Zhou Beiyan stunned, yet he understood the old man's words all too clearly, and a chill ran through his heart. Good heavens. Li Xunfeng's surname is Li, and Li Zijai's surname is also Li. They are from the same family. This Li Xiaowei is from the Moongei's immortal family. Only then did he realize something was wrong and silently cried out in misery, but the old man turned on him and cursed, you with the surname Zhou. With such a guest arriving, you did not bother to inquire properly and hastily sent someone to question them, even claiming a vicious person had come to the door. I will hold you accountable for this. What? Zhou Beiyan broke out in a cold sweat. The current might of the Li family was something even the Yuan family could not withstand, let alone a minor rogue cultivator like him. Li Xunfeng had an immense reputation in this region, with several people even imitating his archery over the years. Zhou Beiyan did not dare say another word and could only stand there like a mute. Li Xiaowei watched as the old man framed the matter as a failure of recognizing him in person and pushed Zhou Beiyan to the forefront. He remained silent, applying pressure without a word. After talking for some time and seeing that Li Xiaowei still did not respond, Yuan Hua could only let out a long sigh and say tremblingly, ah. Yuan Hua had both respected and feared Li Xunfeng from the very beginning, with not the slightest intention of offending him in his heart. However, as a cultivator promoted by the Ning family while stationed in the Outer Sea, his position was sensitive, and he had no say in the affairs of the Yuan family, only the right to listen. The moment he heard that Yuan Hudu and Yuan Haiyuan were wavering between both sides, he knew disaster was coming. As it turned out, Yuan Chengzhou within the sect was also unreliable. What had once been a fine relationship between the two families, with bonds of senior brotherhood above and goodwill between the families below, even to the point of considering marriage ties, was ruined when two elders and a youth sold out Yuan Chengdun, transforming matters into the irreconcilable state they were in now. Now that Yuan Hudu had died suddenly from a relapse of old injuries, and Yuan Zibin had taken charge of the household as an even more reckless and perverse figure, it was clear that the entire Yuan family had rotted to the core over 3 generations. This had now dragged Yuan Hua into offending a purple mansion realm power as well. With the other party now coming to his door, Yuan Hua could only feel his heart bleeding as he said quietly, the juniors in the family were ignorant and ill-mannered. The enmity between the Li family and the Yuan family was not something that could be resolved with a few words. Li Xiaowei knew he neither had the standing nor the inclination to mediate on behalf of his elders, so he waved his hand and replied, Island Master of Tai Island need not say so much. I was merely passing by, and will leave once I have exchanged for the spirit item. He pointed to the jade box on the table. Yuan Hua behaved himself as he took it out to appraise it, felt a chill in his heart, and said in a low voice, My lord, Tai Island currently has a white-skinned fan called the White Abundance Fan. It belongs to the Boundless Essence Dao and can stir black and yellow cheese. It is a rare Dharma artifact and was entrusted here for sale by a peak master of the Azure Pond sect. It should be of suitable value. Li Xiaowei finally heard something of interest. Boundless Essence Dao Dharma artifacts were rare, and the black flames catalyzed by his armor cycle soul-refining halberd art were also of the Boundless Essence Dao, making such an item suitable for his use. He asked which peak master is it, and what does he require? Yuan Hua wiped away his sweat and replied, It is the former peak master of UNG Peak, also a mid-stage foundation establishment realm cultivator. His surname is Deng and his given name is Yuzhai. He is now over 100 years old and cultivates in this region, so he entrusted the item to us for sale. He glanced at Zhou Beiyan. The man felt as though he had been pardoned and quickly hurried out to fetch the person. Li Xiaowei, however, felt reassured and nodded inwardly as he thought, so he is from the Deng family. Yuan Hua glanced at the table and immediately took a liking to the long staff. After examining it a few times, he hesitated, wary that items from Chengxiao Gate were not something he could use freely. He said, As for this long staff, this old man can decide to keep it on the island for sale. He rummaged in his sleeve for a moment, took out a white luminous pearl of pure radiance and asked tentatively, This is a protective spirit barrier called Light Profound Radiance Blessing of the Pure Essence Dao, suitable for all Daos. Why not have my lord use this first, while the long staff is kept on the island for sale? Once it is sold, we can compare values, make up any difference, and then negotiate at the lake. Li Xiaowei only needed a glance to know the old man wanted it for himself. The life-preserving effect was indeed useful to elderly cultivators, but he feared Chengxiao Gate's methods and wanted to keep it to have someone appraise it first. Light Profound Radiance Blessing was compatible with all Daos, but Light Barrier Dharma artifacts were usually expensive. Since this one was being readily offered in exchange, it likely did not provide much protection. He had no use for the long staff and did not wish to run about various markets, so he pushed the wooden staff across and took the white luminous pearl into his hand. My lord, please have a look. This is the catalog of treasured items on the island. Yuan Hua accepted the wooden staff and examined it fondly several times. However, he was clearly ill at ease in front of Li Xiaowei, so he used the excuse of inspecting and making inquiries to withdraw. Li Xiaowei took the catalog and began perusing it. Before long, he heard Zhou Beiyan's respectful voice, My lord, please come inside. A middle-aged man, his hair and beard graying, stepped forward. He was extremely thin, with sharp features and narrow eyes. His expression was fairly calm. After sweeping his small eyes around and seeing Li Xiaowei, he gave a slight bow and said with a sigh, Head of the Li family, we finally meet. I am Deng Yuzhai of the Simen Prefecture Deng family. Deng family was a small family. Although it had a foundation establishment realm cultivator to support it, it had been forced by the Kai family to cultivate a special technique, resulting in generations of madness and extinction. It was only after Kai Wei fell and Kai Jian intervened to ease matters that the Deng family improved. Deng descendants no longer cultivated that technique, and Deng Yuzhai was considered the last one. The Deng family had formed ties with the Li family long ago. It was said that Deng Yuzhai's elder brother, Deng Qiaji, was a close friend of the sword immortal Li Qijing. In the past, Li Xiaowei had sent letters to Li Quantao through the Deng family. Although they did not interact often, the relationship was solid. Li Xiaowei rose and invited him to sit. Although Deng Yuzhai's appearance was unsightly, he carried himself with great poise. He took out a jade pot and jade cups, poured the tea, and smiled. Congratulations, family head.